Hey, good morning, everybody. This is the class presentation for the Zero Waste Associates class for spring 2022. And we'd like to welcome everybody and go over the agenda, and then we'll do some rounds of introductions. So here is our agenda for today. All times are in Pacific. I'm just going to kind of go through it really quickly, and then we'll stop sharing and do our introductions and questions for today. And so first of all, we'll do introductions, we'll do questions, then at 9 a.m., which will be 12 Eastern, we'll do City of Bainbridge, 9:30, Live Nations Green Helen Amphitheater, 10 o'clock Northrop Grumman. Then we'll have a break at 10:30 Pacific. Then we'll start with City of Flagler Beach, Florida, City of Toledo and Lucas County, Ohio, discussion, and then next steps. And we won't have a presentation from the Chester team today. Kearney was sick, so we're going to schedule that another time. And if appropriate, we can invite students who are available. That won't be mandatory, but in case folks are available when we reschedule it, we'll invite you. So we have a number of folks coming today to help with being advisors. So I'll go ahead and stop sharing now, and we'll just go around the room and introduce ourselves. So I'll go first. Hello, everybody. Ruth Abbey with Zero Waste USA. And we'll maybe just kind of popcorn around. We'll just introduce who's ever here from an advisor. So Neil, you go first.
Sure. Neil Seldman, Washington, D.C. I work for the Institute for Local Self-Reliance, and I work with Zero Waste USA on a number of projects, and I'm happy to be here.
So glad you're here. Let's see, do we have any other advisors here? Portia, can you see?
Not that I see. Let me double check because I need to get Leslie's attention if she's not here yet.
Oh, I'm here right now.
Oh, good.
Leslie. Go ahead.
And Leslie.
So I'm
there you are.
Leslie Lukash, and I'm Executive Director of a joint powers authority called Zero Waste Sonoma.
Wonderful. And then let's go ahead and introduce for Leslie and Neil's benefit, everybody else who's here. And I'll just sort of call out and you can just introduce yourself. So Adam.
Hi, I'm Adam with Keep Toledo Lucas County Beautiful in Toledo, Ohio.
Great. And Amanda.
Hi, Amanda Waddell with Zero Waste USA. I'm in Gainesville, Florida.
Andy. Hi, Andy.
Hello, I'm Andy. I'm one of the environmental education fellows at Rethink Waste.
And Anne-Marie.
Hi, Anne-Marie Soder from Costa Rica, from Zero Waste Costa Rica.
Barbara. Are you there, Barbara?
Sorry, Barbara Okota. I live on Bainbridge Island, and I'm involved in our Zero Waste group, our local group.
Great. Krista Tornay.
Hi, I'm with Zero Waste USA as an instructor, and I live in the Bay Area and California, and I'm actually right now I'm in Portugal, 8 hours ahead of you. So
great. And Daphne.
Hi, my name is Daphne, and I'm also a public spaces fellow from Rethink Waste.
Great. Elena.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Elena Mateo, and I'm one of the directors from Zero Waste Costa Rica.
Wonderful. Gary.
Gary, I'm a Zero Waste USA member and involved with the mentor in the classes.
Great. How about Jake?
Hi, my name is Jake Banas. I use he, him pronouns. Sorry if it's kind of loud. They're doing something outside. I am a graduate student at the University of Washington studying environmental policy in Seattle.
And Jeremy?
Morning, everybody. I'm Jeremy Drake. I'm with Zero Waste USA, an instructor and TA for this class, and I'm in Missoula, Montana.
And John.
Good morning, John Linkway. I'm an account manager for the Public Services.
And Jonathan.
Sorry about that. I am Jonathan. I'm with the Energy Justice Network, and I'm from New Rochelle, New York.
And Joy.
Hi, I'm Joy Hughes. I'm with Life on Plastic in Gainesville, Florida.
Kimberly.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Kimberly Rios. I work for a local nonprofit called Keep Truckee Meadows Beautiful here in Reno, Nevada.
Lauren.
Hi, my name is Lauren Brueggemans. I'm the Director of Sustainability and Community Engagement for the Coachella Valley's Destination Marketing Organization in Palm Springs, California.
Lonnie.
Good morning. My name is Lonnie Copeland. My company is ARC, Alternative and Renewable Construction. We do work in New York and California, and I woke up in the beautiful Bay Area this morning.
Linda.
My name is Linda Koskela. Excuse me. I'm the Executive Director of nonprofit Repeat Reuse Inc., and I'm in Southern California.
Manuel.
Hey guys, morning. It's Manuel. I work for Alameda County Industries, a garbage hauler for the city of San Ramon. Good to see everybody again. It's been a while.
Yeah, it's been a while. Welcome back. Michelle.
Good morning. I live in, my name is Michelle Rockwell. I live in Baltimore City, and I'm a member of the Clean Water Action Zero Waste Coalition there.
Rachel.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Rachel Dice, and I work for Rethink Waste as a Public Spaces Fellow as well. And I'm in the Bay Area.
Raquel.
Hi, everyone. Good morning. My name is Raquel. I also work at the Rethink Waste as Environmental Education Fellow. I'm also in the Bay Area as well.
And Steph.
Hey everyone, I'm Steph. I'm in Baltimore, Maryland, and I work for Energy Justice Network. I'm a Baltimore organizer on zero waste policy.
Chris Barnick.
I am Chris Sparnick, and I am the Cool Now Program Manager for Zero Waste USA. I'm also an observer for this event today.
And Portia.
Hi, I'm Portia Sinnott. I'm the Zero Waste USA Program Director and one of the founders of this course. And what I'm doing right now is checking you all in. Check, check, check.
Anybody not get a chance to introduce themselves?
Yeah, Ruth. My name is Rick Anthony. Thank you very much. I'm a member of the Board of Directors of Zero Waste USA and chair of the Zero Waste International Alliance.
Thanks, Rick. Anybody else? Hi, Sandra.
Morning, Sandra Curtis. I'm in Berkeley, California, formerly with Plastic Pollution Coalition, now with the Public Health Institute, and I'm a Zero Waste Commissioner in the city of Berkeley with Chris.
Great.
Great. Kiara?
Hi, everyone. My name is Kiara. I work with Rethink Waste, and I'm also in the Bay Area.
Welcome. Anybody else not get a chance to introduce themselves?
Wendy Martin says she'll be logging in about 10 minutes.
Okay, sounds good. Well, we'll see her when we see her. Great. Anybody else? Everybody else introduced? Great. And then for the class members, if you would introduce yourselves again when you are presenting, that will help our advisors keep track of everybody. Portia?
Anne Scheinberg, an associate of ours who happens to live in the Netherlands, is scheduled to meet with us today. She is 9 hours ahead of us, so she may come in and out depending on the needs of her family. But she should be joining us. She's a really interesting person. I'm looking forward to introducing her to you. Thanks.
Great. All right. Well, are there any questions about the process for today? Each of our class teams is going to be giving a 10 to 15-minute presentation, and then our advisors, and Leslie and Neil are assigned to the first group, will be asking questions, providing feedback. And just to remind you, these are class presentations based on potentially theoretical class assignments. They've done research. They may have interviewed folks at the jurisdiction or at the place of business, but there won't be, it won't be in a complete zero waste plan. It'll be a class assignment. So they will have demonstrated their use of the analytical tools and presented some research about the existing conditions at the place of business or at the institution or community, and we'll be making some evaluations and recommendations. So any other questions about how we'll be going today?
Yes, Ruth, Neil here. I'm all set to work with Leslie at 12 noon my time on Bainbridge Island. But from 12 to 12:02, I've got to get off for doing something just for 2 minutes, and then I'll be right back on. I just wanted you to know that.
Okay. Well, we'll get going right now. So I think you'll be able to hear most of the presentation, and then you can come back and do your evaluation. Leslie will get started.
Perfect. Thank you.
All right. Well, let's go ahead. Is the Bainbridge group, anybody else have any other questions or comments? Okay, seeing none. Is the Bainbridge group ready to go to share screens and presentation?
Yep.
All right.
Yep.
Well, take it away,
Just give me
Bainbridge.
1 second.
Ruth or Portia, could we have someone print the screen with all of our photos, our videos?
I'm sorry, what did you say?
I already did it, Rick, Gary.
Great.
Okay.
So are you able to see the presentation?
Yeah, looks good.
Okay, excellent. Go ahead,
Looks
Barbara.
good. Good morning, I'm Barbara Okota, and I was involved in the Zero Waste Planning Class project for the city of Bainbridge Island. I was fortunate enough to be partnered with Jake Thanis and Sandra Curtis for this project. We would like to begin by acknowledging that Bainbridge Island is within the ancestral territory of the Squamish, people of the clear salt water. Next slide, please. So just for reference, I live on Bainbridge Island. You can see it's a small island west of Seattle. Jake lives in Seattle, and then Sandra lives down in Berkeley. So we've got the West Coast covered here. Bainbridge is a small island with 53 miles of coastline, about the size of Manhattan. Now I'm done.
Hi, everyone. Sandra Curtis. Again, a pleasure to have worked with Barbara and Jake on this project, and our advisors, Jeremy and Chris. Bainbridge Island is a relatively affluent community. You can see the statistics here, and it's a relatively older population, median ages over 50. Next slide, please. And it's a highly professional business community. You can see that over 70% of the businesses are in the top two graph horizontal bars: professional, scientific, and then the educational healthcare services. The bottom one, just for reference, is an accumulation of all the other industries that make up about a little bit less than 20%, but no individual one is more than 5%. So they're all less than 5.5%. Next slide, please.
So for the stakeholders, we organize them into 4 categories, and we're fortunate enough to interview representatives from 3 of those. So we interviewed the Autumn Salamak, who's the climate mitigation officer for the city of Bainbridge Island. We also interviewed Heather, whose last name escapes me at the moment, who is the owner of Bainbridge Disposal, which is the private hauling business that we have on the island. And then
Heather
we also, pardon?
Heather Church.
That's right. Thank you. And then we also interviewed Stephen Goldby, who's the president of the Chamber of Commerce. So we got an interesting overlap of perspectives for this.
Plus, Barbara works with Zero
and
Waste
information.
Bainbridge Island.
Yeah, on Bainbridge Island.
So we had our personal expert with us at all times. So as part of our situational report, again, we divided these into 4 categories: groups that provided supportive policies, recycling, hauling, and reuse. The main supportive policies in the city of Bainbridge are very active, and they've already have a climate action plan. They have an RFP out posted to do a food waste analysis, and they recently passed and went into effect at the beginning of the year an ordinance for reducing single-use plastic. The hauling is Bainbridge Disposable, and as mentioned, we interviewed Heather Church. They're a private family corporation, and they have a contract with the Washington State Utilities and Transportation Commission, not directly with the city. There is recycling on a bi-weekly subscription service that for only specifically that category of plastic film, light bulbs, film, fiber, and batteries with a business called Ridwell. And then there are a number of reuse facilities with the Rotary Club doing a really interesting annual auction, and a few others on the island. Next slide, please.
Okay, so we'll jump into the data with our situational report. So we were able to find information from Kitsap County on the several solid waste streams for Bainbridge Island. However, it was a bit incomplete. We weren't able to find any source reduction, reuse, or composting data. So as you can see, landfill is the largest stream by far. Although if you add in composting or food waste scraps, it maybe will be smaller in proportion. And then the next slide is to just show, again, without compost, the waste streams. Paper is the largest, as newspapers, or like reading newspapers, actually really popular on Bainbridge Island. And this data is from a waste analysis, prior waste analysis in 2020, I believe. And let's see, let's keep going. And then we used estimates from the Seattle Combined Waste data to understand what the value of the materials were for discards, and it totals about $1 million, which is pretty sizable, we thought, especially for Bainbridge Island.
So in terms of food scraps, as you can see, very little data has been collected in any of restaurant schools in terms of recycling collection. And then we did look at some of the barriers. But as I mentioned in an earlier slide, the city has looked at that and does have an RFP out to collect this information. Next slide.
Okay, so just to echo what Sandra just said, we have absolutely no data for food scraps from restaurants and schools. So we can't estimate the size of the problem or what the cost would be to operate a program to collect those scraps. And there's significant and untapped greenhouse gas savings in terms of the food waste that is likely going into landfill instead of being composted. So additional barriers, we certainly need to do more education about what food waste can be combined with yard waste. And the county, so it's the county that's the provider of educational materials. So we have kind of a disjointed system here Currently, the city has no leverage. And the information is provided by the county, and the carrier during the interview told us that she did not believe it was her responsibility to be an educator. So there's a lot more to be done in terms of education. And then also we learned in interviewing the hauler that there are some access issues. So collection containers aren't located convenient to the businesses that they serve. Some of the trucks are too large for lanes behind buildings, and they're only picked up, the compost is only picked up on the island twice weekly. So even if restaurants were able to use composting services twice a week twice a month would not be sufficient for them.
Hey, Barbara, maybe
next
go off
slide,
video.
please.
Barbara, maybe go off video because you're kind of cutting in and out a little.
Okay.
Ruth, I have a question, Ruth. I'm taking notes. I'm saving all my questions for the end. But these are factual questions. So should I wait till the end, or should I ask now?
No, go ahead and wait till the end.
Okay, no problem. Thank you.
So just to talk over some of our key findings, the first one is there seems to be a sizable, around $1 million income opportunity for reusing or finding uses for some of the waste streams. The second one is there's no data on food scraps or composting, and that's including residential where there's current service pickup, and then commercial and school where there's not any current servicing. The third one is the hauler does not offer food scraps collections for commercial, again, back to number 2. So restaurants, grocery, and small businesses really don't have a feasible option for their food scraps right now. Number 4, residential food and yard trimmings. Our collection is optional, so it's not mandatory. So it's really, you have a portion of the population participating, and that's also an opportunity. The fifth one is there's just insufficient education. Barbara kind of talked about this on how to properly compost, what goes in the composting, and just how to kind of use the system, and which containers to put it in. Oops. So we'll talk over, let me change this. I don't know where to put it. Okay, so we'll talk over some of the recommendations for food scraps for residential. So the first one is kind of step 1, which is establish a tangible zero waste target and timeline for all food scraps. So that includes residential, and then we'll talk about commercial on the next slide. Develop a mandatory plan to be able to get organic collection to every home in Bainbridge Island, and then also make sure to, in the process, to address equity, because there may be certain populations that aren't choosing to opt in now because of possible cost reasons. So figuring out how to manage that. And then from a program standpoint, we recommend increasing community outreach and engagement just to get the current information, flyers, and material to residents, but then also secondly, to create a public education campaign to really take the current materials to the next level so that it's actually resonating and connecting with people. People are understanding it. And then the last one for programs is encourage composting at the neighborhood level. So like promoting communal composting bins and neighborhood gardens where people grow their own food and then can return some of the nutrition back to the soil. And then accessible public worm bins, because they're pretty easy to maintain. You just throw your scraps in there and it turns into black gold. So the last one is infrastructure. So Barbara touched on this a little bit, but just to foster really collaboration between some of the major stakeholders, and specifically in relation to how the hauler, the accountability maybe of the hauler and ability to kind of contract for additional services.
Great. So is that it? Are you all wrapped up?
No.
Barbara?
Oh, sorry. Barbara, go ahead.
Can you move the
next slide?
This is commercial.
Okay, so we wanted the city to develop an actionable plan to address organic collection from restaurants, groceries, and small businesses. They do have sort of a vaguely expressed interest in this in the climate action plan, but we really want something specific and deadlines, since it is a 7-year process for the city to take over the contract with the hauler. And then we need to create educational outreach campaign tailored to local businesses, especially staff. And that will be a challenge because with restaurant turnover, they still need to be aware of what appropriate, composting practices are and taking off those irritating little stickers from all the produce. And then we also need more volunteers to be able to go out into the community and talk with them about how to compost food scraps. There aren't any kind of ongoing public trainings about that. And then for infrastructure, we need to foster collaboration between the environmental groups on Bainbridge, of which there are many. For small island, we've got all kinds of environmental groups. The city itself and Kitsap County Solid Waste, so we can bring these 3 different areas of, groups of people with expertise together to make a more concrete plan. And then we finally recommend that the city contracts with the hauler to expand composting pickup to commercial. It's just shocking that that's not an option on this island.
So some further recommendations we discussed are to conduct a waste composition analysis, which includes composting and food scraps, develop a plan that's appropriate, that will be appropriate handling for construction and demolition. There's some issues that were mentioned in one of our interviews that construction and demolition is ending up in just regular litter collection, and that's problematic. The city of Bainbridge should, we recommend that they consider entering the contract, as Barbara just mentioned, directly with the hauler rather than having it be with the Utilities Commission, and to have the environmental groups work with the schools to figure out how to do collection and composting plans. And it would be great to integrate educational lessons with that, maybe tie it in with their STEM education and outreach to staff. And then to look at study the impact of the production of food scraps from, there's a very high visitor population that comes to the island, tourists that come. It's about, even though the population is about 25,000, there's about 1 million tourists that come to the island every year. And then further to look at, to really explore reusables in food service. There are a lot of developing models for that now. And the final recommendation is to install water refill stations on the island to reduce the single-use plastic bottles. Okay. Let's sum up, Barbara. Can't hear you, Barbara.
So our possible next step, we want to share our project findings with the stakeholders. Pardon me? Can you hear me?
We didn't hear you earlier.
So we want to share the project with the 3 entities that we had interviews with, and also with Sustainable Bainbridge, which is the umbrella organization for the environmental groups on the island, of which Bainbridge Island Zero Waste is one. And we want the city to conduct a waste analysis, including the compost stream, because that's just missing. And then we'd like to add a section, or have the city add a section to the climate action plan that specifically focuses on zero waste targets and implementation timeline. The climate action plan is like 130 plus pages, but it's primarily concerned with greenhouse gas emission reductions and also resilience to climate change. So the section for waste is really kind of short, but you know, the city's also looking at a much bigger picture that includes flooding on the island. We do have a bridge that leads off the island, but we have roads now that are getting flooded regularly. And with with the sea level rise, we're worried about saltwater intrusion into our aquifer. We're a single aquifer source island. So they have a much bigger picture than our zero waste targets. And we would like to have something more specific about zero waste added to the climate action plan. And then I think it would be great to have the compost waste data so we could figure out how much greenhouse gas emissions have been generated by food that's going into landfill inappropriately. So we could know how much reduction we could gain from finally getting a composting system everywhere on the island. Okay.
That's our presentation.
Beautiful, beautiful picture. Thank you so much.
Mhm.
All right. Well, let's, you can go ahead and unspotlight Chris, and let's turn it over to Leslie to start off the discussion and any kind of reaction and questions for our group.
Great job, everybody. I can see you put a lot of effort into it. I really loved just the style and the colors and the bold that you used to put into your presentation to showcase some of your thoughts and recommendations. And I gotta say, I was making notes of things I was hoping to hear, and you ended up hitting on most of them, especially that climate piece at the end. I was, you know, in the beginning, I didn't hear much about the direct connection between carbon or methane production from organics going to landfill. But at the end, you certainly ended up addressing that and how organics really is a component of any climate action plan. As well as I was curious about the backyard composting or community composting projects. And you hit on that as well. One question I had is about edible discarded food. Are there any programs on the island of maybe grocery stores that have imperfect foods like fruits and vegetables that can give them to maybe people who need it? Although you did mention the island was affluent, so I didn't know if you had a population on the island who would benefit from discarded edible food that was still good. So is there any thought about discarded edible food and capturing them?
I can respond to that. So we have two grocery stores on the island, one of which is Town and Country, and they donate edible food to a helpline house, which is, you know, social service support for people who are struggling. So it's an informal arrangement, but yeah, that grocery store is very generous to the community in a number of ways and very mindful of their waste.
Great. That's all I have for now.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you so much, Leslie. Let's see. I think, Neil, are you back?
Yeah, I'm here.
Yeah. Did you want to go ahead with your questions?
Yeah. Yes, I have some questions, but let me make them in the context of some observations, if that's okay. Here's my impression. You've got a 40% recycling rate, which is good. 20 and 19 yard debris from your data. So that's good. Food scraps are a terrific target for obvious reasons, both for getting usable food to people, animals, and then ultimately for composting or anaerobic digestion. But I didn't hear an appreciation for a decentralized approach to composting. Sometimes it's called distributed composting. And the first step is backyard composting, which of course is the easiest because the material never gets into the waste stream. And given the professional, highly educated population you have, I can only imagine that backyard composting is not considered too gross a thing for a family to do. It's actually quite good for a family for a number of reasons. So backyard composting, community composting for food production is probably not as important because you're living in an affluent community. But it's fascinating to me that you have one hauler which dominates. And that says to me that there's a lot of room for small business startup competition. And the place I would start would be a small company with small trucks to get through those alleys and to service the restaurants, hotels, etc., to set up a composting business collection. And I don't know what the tip fees are at your landfill, and I don't know what rates your haulers are charging, but it would be worth it for a business group or a group of business students, economic students, to look into a business plan for a small business to service those companies, service restaurants, colleges, etc.
You want to pause right there, Neil, and see if you have any responses from the team. Did those items that Neil brought up in terms of the distributed community compost and small hauler entrepreneurial compost collection?
I might just interject. I know you had to leave for a short period of time. We did have one slide, and Jake, you might be able to pull that one up, where we did talk about those having individual and community composting.
I obviously missed that, but yeah. I'm going to get to incentives in a moment. So I did step away for 2 minutes, so I missed that. I apologize.
Sandra, what about the small scale entrepreneurial composting collection? Is there an opportunity for that? Did you look at that at all?
I think so. We did talk with the Chamber of Commerce, and we talked about some like financial opportunities, which seemed to actually be the one thing that perked interest, let's say. I know we talked about like coordinated local compost and like worm facilities that somebody could basically turn into soil and then resell that soil, especially targeting tourists that are coming to Bainbridge Island, because that's something easy. You could send home like a little pack of concentrated nutritious soil.
If I may respond, that's a great idea. We have a good friend in our network, Rhonda Sherman from Georgia, or Carolina, excuse me, who could help you with that. She's a vermicomposting expert and entrepreneur. And there are also haulers that, for instance, Waste Neutral in Baltimore has a contract with the school system for City of Baltimore contract to pick up. So happy, if you want to pursue this, happy to give you leads and other entrepreneurs to talk about. And my colleague Brenda Platt has a whole network of community-based composters across the country, and that's a wonderful network for you as researchers or for people who are interested in getting in the business.
Yeah, I think Barbara might be interested in the contact information just to pass on. I know that because Bainbridge is an island and it's also quite like relatively rural, even though it's across the water from Seattle, and it's pretty far from the MRF and Tacoma, like distance-wise driving, and the volume is going to be relatively small to do that. So I think it will be really difficult to get somebody interested in, given all of those kind of like challenges or barriers, which is why I think like community solutions where you're actually like keeping the compost or food waste like in the community, doing your own composting, backyard bins. I think that a lot of residents are doing that now. And one of the reasons why we talked about like community bins is because there is a lot of newer developments, like high density living that is concentrated in the downtown area around the ferry terminal. And there might be some opportunities to find public space like in parks and do some type of like pea patch program with community composting. So we thought that that made like logical kind of sense.
Lots of small projects are great. I would never consider sending organics off the island. You've got your home market, you've got gardening and all that stuff. No need to ship it. If we have time, I'd like to get involved in how you're dealing with recyclable materials, shipping them.
In the interest of time, why don't you kind of wrap up all the rest of your comments, and then we'll let the students respond.
I got it. I'm sorry for taking up too much time. As I said, I would like to know what the haulers are charging, what the tip fee is. And let me, I think you need to use all your environmental groups to pressure the government. The government's not doing enough. This response that this government person's not an educator is ridiculous. If you have strong communities, you organize them. The last thing I'll point out is reuse. You are an affluent community, although of course every community has people in need. I would emphasize reuse for any number of reasons. One, the affluent people have a lot of stuff to give away. It's needed. It pays sales tax. Urban Ore in Berkeley is a perfect example, or there are many, many others. So I would focus on reuse and food. And if you get me some numbers, and you're interested, I'll help you figure out if there's an opportunity for a small company advertising and serving for food organics pickup.
So keep in mind, Neil, this is a class project. So, implementation steps and next steps are kind of optional.
I thought all these people were billionaire investors.
Let's see if others in the class or other advisors.
Can I respond to one comment? When you said it was the hauler who said it's not their job to educate.
Oh, excuse me, my fault.
Yeah, which is horrible. but the city is trying to do education. So
thank you.
Let's give credit where it's due.
I thank you for correcting me.
Mm-hmm.
Great. Any other questions or comments for the Bainbridge group? Okay, well, how about a big round of, go ahead, Gary.
Yeah, I just wanted to say great presentation. The use of comparable data is something that I didn't hear being explored, and we use that in a lot of zero waste plans. And I was just searching for examples, and one that comes to mind is Catalina Island, which has 1 million visitors per year. It's in California. Every community in California has waste data posted on the website at calrecycle.ca.gov. So that would be one location. The other thing for comparable data would be looking at places that receive 1 million visitors a year, like Disneyland or Del Mar Fairgrounds, or some of the parks in San Diego that have been pursuing this. And I was going to try and look at truegbci.org projects to see if there's any true certified zero waste facilities besides pieces of Disneyland and Disney World, which are, got into it a little bit, but those would be good comparables to find out what types of policies and programs and infrastructure they've implemented to achieve getting certified.
Thank you. That's really helpful. Thank you.
If I could just add something, there's another great resource, Christine Kubat, who works for, I'm putting her email in the chat. She has completed a report on a zero waste report for Hawaii Island. Obviously, it has some information that could be relevant. Rick, I, and Ruth and Gary worked on that project. But Christine wrote the report, and she's very articulate.
Thank you so much, Neil and Gary and Leslie. That's great feedback. We're going to go on.
Oh, wait.
Portia.
I wanted to make a few points. Gary took my comparable data example comment, but I wanted to point that it is in your homework early on. I don't remember which week you're supposed to go to CalRecycle and look at waste categorization data, but you also have a step there for looking at business related projects data. Also, something that we haven't asked before, but I would like, it would have been great if you had a picture. And I'm not saying you should do this, it's just for future reference. I'm going to ask people to put an example of the city or county or businesses promotional materials, because it would help the discussion. But thanks. Good job, y'all. Jake, will you be leaving us shortly? All right. Well, thanks for coming, and Chris will share the recording with you fairly soon.
Krista Tornay, I see you have your hand up.
I just want to say it was really a privilege to get to work with the group, and I think you did a great job. And always interesting to to see what comes out of the group dynamic. So, and I know that Jeremy was super helpful in this too. So just nice to see, and I hope you got a lot out of it too. And Bainbridge is lucky. Bainbridge Island's lucky. So I hope that you get all the way to the top with your information and get some action. So thanks.
All right. Thank you, Bainbridge Group. So we're going to move on to sort of keep ourselves on schedule. We've kind of scheduled our reviewers and advisors so that they're not spending all their time with us today. So we want to make sure we're respectful of everybody's time and keep it on schedule. So we're going to kind of go next to Live Nation. So take it away, Live Nation Glen Ellen Amphitheater Group. And please go ahead and introduce yourselves again, just so everyone remind us who you are.
Hello, welcome to the Zero Waste Planning Project for the Glen Helen Amphitheater. This project was assessed and prepared by Kiara, Daphne, Raquel, Kim, and myself, Linda. Next slide. This is our project outline that we'll be going over today. Next slide. So Glen Helen Amphitheater is located in San Bernardino County in Southern California within the Glen Helen Regional Park. It was constructed in 1982 and is the largest outdoor music venue in the United States. At 20,000 square feet, Glen Helen has a maximum capacity of 65,000 people, but may sell out at 45,000. The amphitheater is rented for concerts, graduations, and corporate events. It's owned by the County of San Bernardino and managed by Live Nation. There are 700 full-time, part-time, and seasonal employees that help to put on 10 to 12 events per year. It's a space with great versatility that can be altered according to the event taking place. Next slide. We used population information from the surrounding counties up to a 2-hour drive from Glen Helen. It is important to note that demographics can vary based off of the events and price points. Most events at the Glen Helen Amphitheater are all ages. However, some events have a high ticket value, which directly affects the demographics in attendance. For example, the first event of this year was the Smokers Club Festival. It consisted of 4 stages, over 40 artists, with a general admission ticket price of $225. There were not many children or fans under 18 in attendance. Next slide. The surrounding business demographics within a 10-mile radius from Glen Helen Amphitheater include many industrial type facilities like a pallet supplier, FedEx, a major construction company, distribution and transport, as well as Cal State San Bernardino. The amphitheater is located between 2 major arteries in Southern California, the 15 and 215 freeways, making it an easily accessible commute from the 4 surrounding counties.
Okay, my name's Kiara, and now we're going to look at our situational report. So in May of 2019, Live Nation Entertainment, they wrote up a charter and they announced their commitment to sustainability through a global sustainability coalition, Green Nation. Their primary targets are to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 50% by 2030, end sale of single-use plastics by 2021, and work with partners towards shared sustainability goals and holding all vendors to a higher product standard. At our specific venue, Glen Helen Amphitheater, hit next. There are 10 40-yard bins per event that cover landfill, compost, and recycling through bin colors and signage. There's also 6 brown food waste dumpsters that are supplied by Burtec, who is the local waste hauler. Waste can vary depending on event, and we found that there's not high enough attendee participation or compliance, which led us to believe that there's a general lack of education and improper bin placement. Next slide. So there's a lengthy list of what is and is not allowed. You can see that on the left. One thing you can bring in is hard plastic water bottles, which can be reused and refilled at these free water stations. And then we also have a picture of what it's like to enter an event. So those big rain barrel bins were actually covered in black plastic bags to signify landfill bins. So there are gray landfill bins at the venue, and those will be used for future events. This was just the first event. Next. So here we have a photo on the left of the vendor area pre-show and all the waste being generated. And after this photo was taken, the vendors were told that they had to further separate the plastic from the cardboard. And then as for drink containers, they came in a range of cups, from compostable Live Nation cups to recyclable to non-recyclable, and utensils were a mix from bamboo to single-use plastic. So all of those items ended up kind of in the pit before the cleaning crew arrived, and you can see that in the bottom right. But for the most part, cans were recycled and cups were landfilled. And then the image of the truck on the top right, it holds just a portion of all of the aluminum cans and plastic water bottles that were collected. These items in the bags then went to Urban Conservation Corps to be weighed, sorted, and used for payment for their services at the event. Next slide. And here we have 2 food waste dumpsters with non-strategic placement and general misuse. So many vendors did make good use of paper products for food, and they were responsible for their leftovers, but there's no evidence of edible food recovery or donation programs. So there were 6 of these bins total, but only 1 was actually brought to the sorting station to be diverted organic material, while the rest was bagged in these non-compostable green plastic bags. So there's definitely room for improvement here so that we can lessen the amount of organic materials that we send to landfills, which is ultimately releasing harmful greenhouse gases into our atmosphere and increasing climate change effects. And then our top right picture, oftentimes events run over. So the trash pickup then gets completed in a very hurried fashion, and all the items end up in mixed bags. So despite the different teams from recycling, composting, and sustainability, it's really hard to source separate with the large audiences and the large amount of waste. And then our image on the left are some landfill bags, and then we have some recycling in the middle. These are both in their own 40-yard dumpster, and then we have pictures of the hand sort stations on the right. Next slide. And then here we just wanted to highlight some of our biggest waste issues, from understaffment to bin placement to general unorganization and lack of education. It also is a new program at Glen Helen Amphitheater, so that definitely adds to the difficulty for implementation. And our biggest waste items were those small plastic sauce packets, general food waste, and some single-use items. And then finally, specifically for this event, it was a Smokers Club event, so there was a lot of lithium-operated battery vape pens. Next slide. So there's various stakeholders who attend the events, to those that perform, to food services, emergency services, and all of those that work behind the scenes as sponsors, investors, and employees. So the waste hauler, as we mentioned before, is local. They're Burtec, located in San Bernardino County, and they have various facilities to deal with recyclable, compostable, and landfill materials. Next slide.
Hi everyone, my name is Raquel. So far to results, we were not able to access accurate data from the venue itself. So therefore, we utilize CalRecycle data. By using the commercial waste stream by business group, we selected the County of San Bernardino in the category of arts and entertainment. We were able to generate the data of the total generation of each waste material, which we're about to see in the next slide. So in 2006, CalRecycle indicated that average 2.44 pounds of waste is generated per visitor per day at an event and at venues. So therefore, based on the 40,000 attendees, about 907,600 pounds of waste was generated at one event. And the picture on the right that we see over here is just basically how they collect the data and do waste characterization. Next slide, please. So over here, this is our tool results of the total percentage and tons of amount of waste material we receive for each material. As we can see, we receive quite a lot of food waste and a lot of paper in the event. Next slide, please. So in our findings, we found four findings. One is the 3-bin system was not implemented. They were separated by the blue bin and blue bin for both recycling in the landfill. And they used a black linear plastic to wrap the blue landfill bin to help indicate its differences. Secondly is most of the bags didn't end up going to the landfill. Third is there was not enough resources or employees to sort all of the waste that was generated. And last but not least, there were 30 bags of organic material, which was equivalent to 15,000 pounds of food sorted and diverted from the landfill. Next slide, please.
Hi, everyone. This is Kim. Our divertibility analysis, basically, we did not have access to a lot of the key metrics from Glen Helen Amphitheater. Thus, we used Cal Recycle's business group's waste stream data as a proxy. We took a look at San Bernardino County and selected the Arts, Entertainment, and Recreation business group as it aligns closest to our chosen business. We received information that Live Nation employs approximately 700 people, which ranges between full-time, part-time, and seasonal. We took a look at the top waste items generated under paper, glass, metals, and plastics. Our outcomes show a hypothetical situation of Glen Helen Amphitheater with 810 tons of waste generated and 718 tons of waste sent to the landfill, which is 89%. We saw that only 11% is being diverted through recycling and composting. Next slide.
So, hi, my name is Daphne. After reviewing the current infrastructure stakeholders involved at Glen Helen Amphitheater, we came up with policies, programs, and infrastructure recommendations that can help with the venue on the path of zero waste. So first, we focus on the policy recommendation based on the 100 EPA proven practices. So as you can see, the policy recommendation in this slide is focused on the ICI sector, also known as the industrial, commercial, institutional sector. So the first policy we want to recommend is a service provider contract franchise agreement incentives. So which amends the contract agreement between Live Nation and the venue to achieve a higher diversion by providing incentives, and examples are like contract extensions, lower franchise fees. The second policy is a zero waste private venue events. This promotes settings of zero waste goals to the owners and operators of the private venue. Provides training and technical. The third one is to lead to zero waste, and this provides training and technical assistance to event coordinators for the implementations. By contractual purchases, by avoiding purchases of disposable goods, minimal waste, and waste in products and packaging designs. So moving on to programs with one of the events, it was a smokers event, which allows single-use vape pens. And vape pens have batteries, which are difficult to reuse. It would help with the process if they adopted a point of sales fee to help with the fees associated with the recycling process of single-use pens. Another program is to have best practices training, such as conducting training, having site visits, waste audit assessments, which will help with increasing recycling rates. The last program recommendation is social marketing. There is a lot of disconnect with their goals and letting their attendees understand the venues and vendors' sustainable goals. So these goals were to increase reducing recycling and composting, and therefore developing a social marketing would help increase participation in that. Moving on to infrastructure recommendations. The focus is mainly on the commercial. So having the 3 bin systems, having signage so that the visitors can see and sort properly. Also, having bulk condiment dispensers, which tackles that the single-use ketchup packets and condiment packets, banning single-use plastic by all participating vendors, and having reusable water bottle the fill-up stations as the focal point in their plan, in their structure. And I'm going to pass it on to Kim.
Finally, we do have some recommendations for possible next steps, starting with having a general management meeting. We did notice there was a lot of miscommunication or just lack of communication in general between the general management, which led to a lot of inefficiencies throughout this project and throughout their first event. And so we suggest, as part of that general management meeting, to consult the Live Nation Environmental Charter so as to align goals to the charter, and then also take a look at the infrastructure and plan out a baseline analysis to capture essential data needed. And then also planning a budgeting session to identify the costs for staffing and capacity in order to fill in those operating goals. Then after that, we also recommend having a stakeholder meeting, because that's something else that we felt was missing. And this is involving all of the vendors and the partners and the fans, so that everyone is on the same page and is being communicated the same plan across the board. And then that leads on to establishing an environmental management system and action plan to set out the steps that will be needed in order to achieve short and long-term goals, and having something basically tangible and just a physical outline of what will be needed and what will be addressed is also a very strong recommendation. And then just continuing to reference this plan and have it available across all sectors. And then finally, conducting a waste characterization analysis. We found that that was quite challenging to try to find data when there wasn't really a waste characterization analysis. And so by having this, it'll help fill in the initial data needed. And then we just recommend having a reassessment of the waste stream every 2 to 3 years. Since Live Nation hosts over 35,000 concerts and festivals each year, the organization has the opportunity and responsibility to provide artists and fans with a live music experience that protects our planet. Next slide. And with that, thank you for listening. We hope you enjoyed our presentation. We welcome any feedback or questions at this time.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Glenelle and team. We are so lucky to have Leslie here today because she actually has expertise in large venue recycling and composting. So we'll start off, Leslie, with your comments and questions. And you can go ahead and stop sharing. There you go.
Yes, looking at all your pictures and experiences, I was thinking, man, that was like, I don't know if Live Nation is like greenwashing, or they're not really like there yet, because I saw just so many things wrong, and most of them you guys picked up on. So that was really great. One of the things I think Live Nation needs to do is also focus on the pre-event setup. So you mentioned there was like multiple stages. So all those, when you have multiple stages, there's like construction of those stages. And so, and there's tends to be like little VIP areas to those stages, and VIPs are treated a little bit different with like different food. So anyway, there's a lot of opportunity like while they're setting up that they could be collecting recyclables. Live Nation needs to do sustainable purchasing, like you've mentioned. I saw just a lot of like bad purchasing decisions, like the single-use condiments, And you guys are spot on with all of that, serving in bulk. Really, since their events are insular, they really can control the products that are coming into the event. And I think that's one of their hugest opportunities, is to make it zero waste and designing for zero waste. I would think that there's a lot of cost savings to Live Nation if they actually did these things that they said that they were going to do in their climate action plan, so they could benefit from saving money. They also need to address their internal contracts, like you stated, with their vendors, and making sure that their vendors comply. They can even be really strict with that. I've done that with some other venues where if vendors don't comply, you can give them a fine if they don't comply with the recycling and composting. And that can all be in contracts. So it's laid out right in front. Another thing with these events is they create a lot of edible food at the end, because the last thing a venue wants to do is run out of food. So there's another component within there of diverting edible food, bringing that out to the public. And then also tying their recycling and composting diversion programs to climate. It seemed like Live Nation has that climate goal, but they were missing the mark in how recycling and composting truly, and reuse truly benefits their climate goals. One question I had was on PLA. You mentioned they were using PLA. Do you know where the PLA is taken to, and if it's truly composted or if it's screened out for disposal?
Sent to the landfill.
Okay, that's what I figured, because 95 or even 99% of compost facilities in California do not accept PLA. It's looked as a contaminant. And so I know you mentioned Live Nation's goal was to reduce single-use plastics. And I really struggle with this myself in trying to go zero waste, like what is best. And so we have these places that are using, single-use PLA products, but we know that means it's going to the composter and they have to pre-screen them and then get a truck and then go now ship that to the landfill. Or is it better just to give them a PET #1 cup if you truly have to use that? We know reuse is best, but if you truly have to use a cup. So we're actually moving towards PET #1 cups, because there's already a really good market for recycling those. But I know Live Nation already said no single-use plastic. So they now you have another disposable product that people think are green that's not really green. But great job, you guys. You hit on like so many of the marks that I would have as a professional. I love that you're working, or that they're working with the Conservation Corps. That's a great tool. I just think the Conservation Corps is overwhelmed because of all the disorganization of Live Nation. Like, that is a cluster of what I saw, and there's just so much room for improvement. And you guys really hit those marks for improvement. So great job.
Thank you so much, Leslie. Did the team have any questions for Leslie, since we have our expert on staff here? Anything? Yeah. Let's well, Jeremy has his hand up, and then let's also go to Neil, but let's go to Jeremy first, since you have your hand up.
Hey team, great job. I just wanted to bring up an idea that's been successful here in Missoula, where there's a not as big of an amphitheater, but there's a sizable amphitheater, 5,000 capacity. It's the idea of green teams, volunteer green teams for the education. That one picture of that overflowing compost dumpster, just heartbreaking, right? So people are obviously just like, oh, there's a thing, I'm going to throw my thing in that thing, and I don't care. No one's telling me what it's for. It would be great to see a recommendation about, like maybe partnering with CSU San Bernardino right across the street to, have an incentive program to get college students to volunteer at these concerts that they'd want to go to anyway. That's how it worked here, where there was a coordinator for the venue who would just get all the volunteers on the right track, give them a T-shirt, you're on the clock until this time, and then you can get off. And the cleanup after the event is way easier if you've got people at zero waste stations. Is another possible approach to this. Instead of just having dumpsters, having actual, like, the 3-bin stations in key traffic areas around the venue, so that people only have a few places where they can throw stuff away, and there's people there who help them make the right choice. And then the cleanup at the end is a lot easier when they're being coached throughout the event.
Thank you so much for that feedback. Neil, I see you're talking. You may be on a different line right now.
Can I respond to Jeremy?
Yeah, please go ahead.
Just a little more information. I'm an actual employee at Live Nation, so I'm one of those zero waste sorters right there. And they only have one person that is the sustainability coordinator that's doing all of this prep work. And I think she's even a part-time employee. And they have the idea of the zero, offering fans an incentive to come and bring us 2 bags of recycled, and we'll give you a ticket, or we'll give you a raffle, I don't know, something. They had a lot of ideas, but there's just not enough people to implement any of it. And we had the 3-stream bins, but they have to be put out by forklifts, and no one on the team drove a forklift. So we had to leave it up to somebody on another team to do it. So they didn't get put out right. It was like Leslie had said, a lot of the events, placements and all that planning, it just was left on one person, and it just was not done as well. I know that Live Nation has been successful in other venues in other states to be 90%, but they just didn't have enough support for this huge scope of trash. And people don't care. They'll throw it on the ground. They don't care if there's a bin for it or not, especially when they're drinking and smoking.
Great. Okay. Any other advisors or mentors or students have any questions or comments for the Live Nation group?
Well, this is Rick. I think, Rick and Laura helped a little bit on the mentoring, but you guys took the lead, and I think you did a great job. I'm very impressed on what you found. And my only thing is, we just finished a special event, 60,000 people with no gates at Balboa Park. And you're right. If you don't have those volunteers and those trash talkers, it can be pretty ugly. I think Live Nation probably in social media and education could probably do an amazing educational program throughout the amphitheater. And my suggestion, I don't know if Ruth and Portia think it's correct, but I think I ought to submit this report to the sustainability person and say, there's some people out there who want to help you. It's a great report, in my opinion. Thank you.
Thanks, Rick. Portia, did you want to go ahead?
Yeah, I agree. It was a great presentation. I'm really happy with your tool results and the way that you worked the outline to work with what the information you had. Congratulations. I missed out whether you were able to interview this young lady who's the sustainability coordinator. And also, I have a question. Go ahead.
So we were in contact, and Linda was working directly under her and with her, but she ended up resigning. And it's just a problem of corporate kind of not wanting to be involved in our entire process, and the sustainability coordinator being very overwhelmed in her personal and professional life. And yeah, so unfortunately we did try to ask all the questions we could, and Linda was very helpful in being there in person and getting the information, but we definitely weren't able to do as much investigative work with the professionals there as we would have liked.
You did great. And I want to remind everybody that I will be working with you somewhat on the final version of your presentation. You're going to get ideas from your other students today, and I'll be asking you for some additional information. For example, if someone didn't put the tool results in, I'm going to ask them to put it in. But I want to say that I don't disagree with Rick's comment, but I want to say that since this was the first event, in 2 years, that we're going to have to be kind of gentle with them. And if you do talk to them, present it in a manner that there's a phraseology saying like, yes, we get it. It was the first time, but there were some crucial issues that need to be addressed, as Leslie referenced. So we can talk more about this later, but good job.
Okay, great. So any other questions or comments for the Live Nation group? All right. Well, thank you guys so much. That was really excellent. And very, I agree with Portia and Rick, very good use of the tools. And you really took it seriously and very impressive. So we're going to take a 15-minute break. We're a little ahead of schedule, but we're expecting our other advisors to come on at the top of the hour. I did want to say thank you to Leslie for dialing in and spending a couple of hours with us this morning and supporting our students. So thank you so much. Leslie is a Zero Waste USA advisor and really supportive of zero waste around the world and in this country and in this state. So thank you so much, Leslie. I think Neil will be back a little later on, so we won't say goodbye to him, but we'll take a 15-minute break and come back. Let's start just at the top of the hour. So that would be 10 o'clock Pacific. All right. Thanks so much, everybody. Okay, everybody, welcome back. We are going to go on with our presentations, but before we do, we wanted to introduce Amy Perlmutter. And go ahead and take it away, Amy. Tell us who you are. Amy is a Zero Waste USA advisor, with a long history in zero waste issues, but go ahead and introduce yourself for the rest of the group.
Sure. Hi, everyone. Amy Perlmutter. I'm in Cambridge, Massachusetts, and I am a zero waste and other things consultant. And I've had a long run developing zero waste programs. I was a county recycling coordinator in New Jersey and the first president of the Association of New Jersey Recyclers. I ran San Francisco's recycling program, and I started and ran a recycling market development center in Massachusetts. And now I am a consultant.
Awesome. Well, welcome, Amy. I don't see John Harder quite here yet, but when he arrives, we'll have him introduce himself as well.
I'm checking with him now.
Okay, and I think we'll go ahead and ready with the Northrop Grumman group. And Amy, just to remind you, we are going to be hearing their class presentation. They've been asked to do some analysis, some investigation, use our zero waste planning tools. It won't be a full implementation project, and they don't have any authorization to do anything in particular with Northrop Grumman, but they'll have some interesting insights. And so your job is to sort of review, comment, ask questions about their recommendations and next steps. And then we'll open it up to the other advisors and reviewers. So take it away, Northrop Grumman team.
All right, thank you. Hello, I'm Stephanie Compton. I'm presenting today with our team of 4 on this zero waste project on the Northrop Grumman plant that's located just outside of Baltimore, with the guidance provided by Gary Liss and Jeremy Drake. So we're following this guideline of contents in the Zero Waste USA training. And first, the demographics. So Northrop Grumman is located just outside of Baltimore City in Linthicum, which is in the next county over in Anne Arundel County, and it shares a runway with the BWI airport. Northrop Grumman is the #1 employer in the private sector, while the other top 4 employers are public, making it 5th overall top employer between the public and private sector. They are a defense contractor of the federal government and work on the development of advanced electronic and maritime systems, design, integration, and testing and manufacturing. Here are the demographics of Linthicum and Anne Arundel County, where the plant is located. Overall, the population is majority white. Average income is $93,000 for Linthicum and overall $103,000 for the county. And noting that the average salary for the employees at Northrop Grumman is comparable to those findings gathered from the census data. And next up is Michelle with the situational report.
Hi, everyone. Great to be here. So I will start off with giving you a very brief site overview of the facility. As you can see, here's the satellite image of the BWI plant. In terms of food services, the facility has 1 cafeteria, and within that cafeteria, the kitchen collects their food scraps. They've been doing that since 2014. In addition to that, there are 2 other seating areas at opposite ends of the plant that have vending machines. In all 3 instances, they only offer plastic foodware. The facility also has universal recycling. There are a rather prolific number of recycling bins throughout the plant. I know, I work there, and more often than not, there is signage, and it is frequently situated right next to a trash bin so that an employee knows where to put what. In terms of business green teams, the company has 4,500 green NG team members across the company. Next slide, please. With regard to the company's solid waste reduction goals, last year in their sustainability report, the company stated that they will achieve net zero greenhouse gas emissions by 2035. Currently, the company is in its strategic planning phase, and they have not yet made specific waste reduction goals yet. However, they have acknowledged the need to work closely with production and manufacturing to reduce waste, and also to revisit contractual agreements with suppliers in order to ensure that they support sustainable practices. One really important thing to uplift is that just recently in a video by the Vice President of Sustainability, he made the statement that the company will be making meaningful engagement with communities with regard to environmental justice issues. Next slide, please. Here is the solid waste diversion and disposal pie chart. As you can see, the company last year in 2021 recycled 42% of its solid waste. And then about roughly 4% went to veterans compost, 31% went to the Bresco incinerator in Baltimore, and 24% went to the Millersville landfill. Next slide, please. In terms of the disposed waste, just to give some more information, the Bresco incinerator is located in South Baltimore. It is the #1 stationary air polluter, and within the city itself is a majority Black population, 62%, and there is a high poverty rate, 20%. And moreover, a Baltimore Health Department study recently, I don't know if it was recently, but relatively recently shared that the life expectancy rates for those living near the incinerator are 20 years lower than those who live in wealthier neighborhoods further away. So this is very clearly an environmental justice issue, and there has been an ongoing environmental justice fight to shut down the incinerator, which makes this a perfect opportunity for the company to end their contract with Bresco. In contrast, the Millersville landfill is located in a rural setting in Anne Arundel County, where the majority white population is further dispersed from the landfill, and the poverty is substantially lower. Next slide, please. So I'd be remiss without talking about the Northeast Maryland Waste Disposal Authority, which is also referred to as the Authority for short. This entity has played a significant role in deterring the multiple counties' ability to implement zero waste management in their counties. To give a little bit more detail, the authority plans and develops waste management systems for member counties, and there are 8 member counties within the state. Multiple counties have received unqualified zero waste consultants, despite having specifically requested consultants with zero waste management expertise. Moreover, the authority has a history of prioritizing incineration over other waste management practices, such as, for instance, composting. In terms of the board, the board structure is predominantly consistent of public works departments heads who have engineering backgrounds. This lack of diverse knowledge has a significant impact on the ability for the board to utilize a systems thinking sort of approach in order to address zero waste solutions. As you can see in the zero waste hierarchy, it's programs and policies that should take precedence. However, the authority focuses predominantly on installing infrastructure, and therefore the authority isn't structured to support zero waste management. Next slide. And now Lonnie, she'll talk about the stakeholders. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. My name is Lonnie Copeland. Just a few key points about stakeholders in general and the possibilities available specifically to Northrop Grumman due to its position in the commercial value chain. The first has to do with the importance of including the right stakeholders in all conversations and efforts that actually impact them. Every one of us lives or works in a way that is impacted by both the life cycle of products and materials that we use in our daily lives. Public and private stakeholders tend to be well-funded and responsible for decisions that impact many others, many of whom don't have a lot of political access. Nonprofits typically comprise volunteers and others that convene people from underrepresented communities or advocate on behalf of the natural environment, which itself has no voice. So there's an imbalance here in general, I think, in any project that we're looking at in terms of the stakeholder representation, just by nature of the way this issue is addressed in our society. So the demographics that Steph showed us, the ultimate impact on communities that lack financial and political resources, yet nowhere did we find in our study regulations designed and implemented in a manner to avoid or eliminate these negative impacts on the people in these communities. As a multinational publicly traded company, however, Northrop Grumman has a wide range of tools and mechanisms that can be leveraged, and it's shown its willingness and capacity to do so on behalf of the entire community's behalf, such as a full service procurement department, empowered by corporate leadership, stakeholders, and lobbyists with ready access to the highest levels of government, not just in the United States, of course, but all around the world. So that's the background on which we're delighted to make some of the recommendations you'll see later in our presentation. Next slide, please. And so here, the county, the governing authority and its agents haven't adopted a zero waste initiative, nor have they worked towards outcome-driven policies and programs and infrastructure that would drive responsible management of residential, industrial, commercial, or institutional waste. Instead, they're set up to serve profit centers and not the purpose that should be at the heart of waste management programs. Next slide, please. So the primary take home here is the outsized contribution, of course, of incineration, a practice that could easily be eliminated with simple management controls and commitment to everybody's health. The next slide, please. And the message here, of course, is staring at you in bold pink. The magnitude of waste that is not classified or characterized. And Manuel, of course, will discuss this a little bit further. And finally, for me in this section, next slide, here we have a list of service providers enlisted to manage waste. This table presents a list of vendors that pick up items having inherent value in today's markets. This is definitely a convenient commercial ecosystem that can be expanded or grown to meet the demands of a future, more rigorous waste management effort. And with that, I'd like to introduce Manuel Beltran.
Hi guys, all right, Manuel here, and I'll be going over the findings that we have here at Northrop Grumman for our project. So here you can take a look that we have been able to identify 7 of the 9 sources of generation here at Northrop Grumman. The other 2 were just not really pertaining to our particular project. And what I wanted to reiterate as to what Lonnie was mentioning earlier is that what we've found here is that staring at us in the pink, as she said, is a 64%. It's an overwhelming majority of our waste that just is not very well characterized. So that leaves a lot of room for figuring out what is actually left that just needs to be identified as an actual commodity. So the other portions are very small. This was just a 2016 disposal stream composition audit. Again, not very in depth. For 2021, we do have the rate, we do have the percentages here, and you can take a look at what is currently being recycled. The largest portions are paper, wood, and metals here at Northrop Grumman. Next slide, please. And so as you can take a look here, we did label those as being the most abundant commodities, and we have labeled them there in red. For the diverted paper currently, most of it is going through the single stream recycling program. However, 10% of it is getting destroyed, and that is because these are confidential documents, as we are a defense contractor, and so we wanted to go ahead and ensure that that was labeled on there as well. In regard to diverted metals, since we are creating, or Northrop Grumman is creating aviation technology, there are a lot of metals that are going into the recycling stream. So as you can see there, 50% is the scrap metals in particular, and then so on. From there on out, it starts getting smaller and smaller into the other metals. Those scrap metals, the mixed scrap metals, are pieces that are or items that are made up of multiple metals in one go, and so it's a very detailed chart right there. And so we just wanted to make sure that we were showing as to what was available through the diverted metals. Next slide, please. So as you can see here on our findings for the market commodities, we were able to go ahead and label exactly what we've been able to find within the already given 2016 data report for the waste stream. However, you can take a look that there are quite a lot of commodities that are just not there yet, because there's 64% of we don't know what's going in there. What is that 64%? So we've been able to come up with a number, though, so far with the items that we currently have for $53,252 for a possible annual revenue that Northrop Grumman could be saving. And again, this is just the snapshot right here, because we need to figure out what is in that 64% first of all. Next slide, please. And on this slide, we wanted to go ahead and show the service opportunities for the different materials that are, some of them for the first three, as you can see, are currently already serviced. But we wanted to also show the fact that there are opportunities that are available for other service providers to come on in and take these materials from us. Or from Northrop Grumman. The first three, we were suggesting that they could go ahead and have a request for proposal, because we do currently have service providers for those. However, it is also a great idea to go ahead and compare and contrast other service providers to allow for better competition, and also to go ahead and take a look at companies that are more aligned in values with the environment and thought. So I will go ahead and take it on over to Michelle for our first list of recommendations.
Thanks, Manuel.
And Michelle, just to let you know, we probably need to wrap up in a few minutes. So
okay.
Might want to speed up a little.
Okay, I'll speed up. Okay, so in terms of policies, we first and foremost, we recommend that Northrop adopt a zero waste goal within their strategic plan, that they choose vendors and partners that reuse and recycle. Here are examples of them. And finally, that they use their political leverage to support neighboring communities on multiple levels. The number one thing being to end their contract with Bresco. I will move on to programs.
All right.
Go ahead.
Got it. So for our program recommendations, we want to start with educating employees on the zero waste mission that is company-wide. Educational materials will look like signage posted wherever workers are, signage at all of the 3 bin stations, and also to recommend including zero waste training in the onboard training for new hires. They could also potentially partner with Gigantic Idea Studio for devising an education program and doing outreach. And we recommend that they consider what the largest diverted commodities are after doing a full waste audit, keep track of the market values, and build a market locally. If Northrop Grumman built a local market, then they could reap the benefits of running it in-house. Come off mute. You're still on mute.
Thank you. Gosh. Okay. So for the recommendations for infrastructure, first and foremost, we do need to have that waste audit conducted because we need to be able to see what we're working with. So that's first and foremost. The next thing that we wanted to go in and get done is ensuring that there is a 3-bin system throughout the entire plant that is accompanied with efficient education, signage, and color coding. So that way people know exactly what it is. It needs to be foolproof. So that way everybody knows exactly what goes where, and signage that needs to go ahead and show what is, usually found within those areas. And then lastly, we wanted to replace all single use wherever possible, part of the zero waste plan that we're suggesting for Northrop Grumman, to go ahead and replace single use items, things like pallets, foodware, and also go ahead and work on getting dishwasher equipment to go ahead and have that done in-house, and also accompany this transition with a publicity campaign to be able to get an employee buy-in with the sustainability plan to get them all on board. And lastly, we'll go ahead and go with Lonnie for possible next steps.
All right, very briefly, next steps will include presenting these findings and recommendations to Northrop Grumman and encouraging Northrop Grumman to adopt a zero waste goal in its strategic sustainability plan, which is up for review now, retain a zero waste consultant to facilitate development of a zero waste plan and implementation schedule, get some action items, and invite government and local private sector stakeholders to engage in a regional circular economy zero waste framework agreement. And that's the end of our presentation. Thank you.
And of course, if you're not for zero waste, how much waste are you for?
How much waste are you for?
Great job, you guys. And thanks for kind of hurrying up there at the end. I really appreciate it. We want to make sure we had enough time for reflection and discussion. So why don't we go ahead and turn it over to Amy for her questions and observation.
Sure. So I thought that was a terrific presentation. I thought you researched things thoroughly, you put it together well, you presented it well. I have a few comments that I made on a little scrap of paper that are all over the place, so they might not be well thought out. But I think focusing on that 60-some% and understanding what that is certainly really important. I love the idea of developing markets locally, and maybe there's a market that you could develop that the neighboring communities could use as well. I didn't see anything on there about glass, and I was just curious if you generate any glass or not. And maybe that's just combined into the single stream, but I think there are opportunities to do interesting things with glass. I was curious, there's a large number of people that are your part of your green team members, and I was just sort of curious what percentage that was of total employees. I forgot what the total employees were. So let me get through these comments, and then I'm just sort of curious about that. One of the things that I thought was missing, and maybe it's not an issue, is more about the food scraps. And so can leftover food, if there's leftover food, be donated to food banks? And there might be an opportunity there. And then, are there ways to reuse some of the food scraps? So making soup stocks or carrot top pesto or interesting things like that. Maybe there could be some ways to reuse them before sending those out. And then I'm wondering, you had talked about product design. So packaging, so you've got the vending machine, things come in packages, the products that you send out, I don't know if those are wrapped or not, but I'm thinking about, are there opportunities to reduce in-house packaging through your purchasing department, but also in terms of redesigning what you send out to customers? Are there some opportunities there as well, so that you're reducing the footprint of things that leave your facility? And I think that's it. I was really glad to see that you are that you weren't just focusing on offices and cafeteria, but that you're looking at the whole facility. So thank you. It's great.
And did the students have any responses to any of Amy's comments?
I work at Northrop Grumman, and I spoke directly with some of the environmental health scientists, and I can't say with absolute certainty, but I thought that one of them said in terms of waste composition that there really wasn't much glass. But still, it will be good to get like a really thorough audit to really understand the amount of glass that Northrop Grumman has for waste.
And I would say that as a team, we have also discussed the opportunities that a supply chain management tool offers to this particular client, because they, by virtue of the sort of business that they do, they have one. And these supply chain management tools are notoriously detailed and can easily be leveraged for the sorts of suggestions that Michelle is talking about, and that the commenter, that Amy, that you suggested.
Great. I see that John Harder is here. John, did you want to unmute and say hello? I'm not sure if you were there for the whole presentation, if you're prepared to kind of give some questions and feedback to the group.
Hi, everybody. Sorry I'm late. I'm in Hawaii, and it's just turning 7:30 right now, so I got up a little late and I'm just rallying. But I did see I guess the last half of the presentation. I thought it was very complete and very well done. My question is that often when we get proposals like this is, will it be implemented? Are the higher ups within the company, within the corporation, committed to implementing the goals of the plan? And then the other one was that I am impressed in the sense that Northrop Grumman, as a large corporation, would have a very large influence on other businesses around. And this is kind of shows where one big entity can be a driver within a community, if you can get them and support them to take the lead. So, and I was kind of wondering what the level of local government support is for this issue, as far as making it beyond Northrop Grumman.
Yeah, so students, did you want to respond to John's questions there?
Yeah, I'll start, and then Michelle maybe can back me up. But something that's great is that Michael Witt is the sustainability lead for Northrop Grumman, and he made a very bold statement saying that they want to be a leader when it comes to environmental sustainability. So that's why we're really excited to also take this information to them and present and give them our recommendations to implement this for sure. And then what was the last thing you said? I forgot.
Local government support. I think you touched on that briefly, but maybe John missed that. But did you want to kind of just reiterate what could we do locally to have the local county and municipalities get more on the zero waste bandwagon?
Right. I guess it's making the economic case, because we've been, I live in Baltimore. We've been doing the environmental justice fight to close down the incinerator for the last decade. So that's the biggest thing. And I know it's really hard to have zero waste policies when you've got an incinerator in that's taking away the incentives to do anything else. So it's a battle that's on the ground and been going for years. So we'll keep working on that.
And that's one thing that we've been really kind of like banking on, is that if Northrop Grumman does end up ending their contract with that hopefully is enough of a push for them to close it down. If they're, if Northrop Grumman is spending so much stuff there, kind of like stopping the food chain going on over there, that's what we want to try to do. That's why we've been mentioning that.
Yeah, I thought that was a great part of your presentation, and the impacts to the local community. That was really fabulous. And it would be great for Northrop Grumman to hear those issues so that they can take action. It looks like Chris Sparnick has his hand up. Chris, did you have some comments or questions?
Yes. Given the nature of the business of Northrop Grumman, it seems to me like there's a likelihood that some of those other materials are hard to recycle, perhaps things like carbon fiber or proprietary alloys, fuels or fuel leftovers, fuel ash, those kinds of things. Those might be things that, even if they don't seem like Northrop Grumman would want to make them known, it might be a good idea just to have it on the surface of things, just as a good face to actually tell us, what is actually in there. If there are hard to recycle things, I think it's okay. This is a technical business, and there's going to be that kind of waste, and we know that. And I think it's okay to make that plain. And if that is the case, I'd like to know how much of that is hard to recycle.
I will say that as a result of my conversation with the two environmental health scientists, that it sounded like the audit itself just wasn't that thorough. I don't doubt one bit that there might be some proprietary material, but it did sound like there was just they weren't reluctant to share the information. They just didn't have the information.
Good feedback. Looks like Mike has his hand up. Mike?
Yeah, hi, thanks for that presentation. How many tons per day do you know are being sent to the incinerator?
I don't know it off the top of my head, but it is on our tool.
Okay.
It's not on our tool, but on a spreadsheet that they provided us. I don't know it off the top of my head, though.
And do we have that as a yearly total and not?
Yes, we do have it as a yearly total.
We could figure it out.
Yeah, I doubt it's going to be anywhere enough to cripple the incinerator's operations if it pulls out, but still every drop counts. So yeah, it'd be interesting to see that. And that facility is in Baltimore County, is that right?
It's Anne Arundel.
Yeah, it's in Anne Arundel
which
County.
neighbors Baltimore City. It's like on the line. It's so close to being in Baltimore.
And what's also really interesting is that because they're a defense industry, they might be able to have pull with Fort Meade, who is a primary employer in Anne Arundel County. And that is a huge, it has a lot of employees and presumably generates a whole lot of waste.
Yeah, well, Fort Meade is NSA, and they probably, for confidentiality reasons, I don't know if they have an incinerator on site like the Pentagon does, but I wouldn't be surprised if they had one. I just never heard of it. But they would probably prefer incineration just because it destroys things more. But
I might address that really quickly,
yeah, go ahead, please.
or sort of a point. I mean, I think that the holy grail for all of this is redesign of processes and systems, which is one of the reasons why it's wonderful to have Michelle on our team, a systems engineer. I just saw news this morning, and I hope I'm not screwing this up. I think it's Goodyear that's introduced a process and a plan to eliminate carbon from its rubber tires through recycling in very innovative ways. So we know some really difficult stuff can happen with focus.
And zero waste businesses, as we like to say, can lead the way. And so a leadership organization like Northrop Grumman, if they take that stance, they might be able to bring the community along. So I think it's a great project. Did you have anything else you wanted to say, Mike?
Yeah, and thanks for the interjection, Lonnie. We should talk more about that because I'm curious why they want to eliminate carbon and not zinc and halogens, which are much more of a danger in the tires and nanoparticles. But Michelle, what I would suggest is maybe if there's any information on why they're choosing to incinerate so much and if it's a cost difference for them. And also if they have this misguided belief that a lot of companies have that incineration is preferable to landfilling, because I'd be happy to debunk that with life cycle analysis and show them that that is incorrect. That's their understanding.
Yes, they based on a friendly conversation with them, they shared that this is what they learned, even though they totally acknowledged that there was like an environmental justice issue, like there was some sort of misconception going. So for sure, some myth busting needs to happen upon communicating with them. Yeah, okay. In terms of yeah,
let's follow up on that then. That's good.
And Mike, I think that whole area of the life cycle analysis would be a great standalone presentation or I know you've presented on it before, but I think that it's a bit more of an advanced subject matter, but I think it would be very interested to folks that are working on zero waste in communities so that they can say even beyond waste reduction and greenhouse gas reduction, there are other really fundamental impacts that can be mitigated through zero waste. So that might be something we can collaborate with you on. Any other questions or comments for the Northrop Grumman group? Oh, Gary, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I just want to follow up on that last discussion with Mike. We did talk in the group, I was the mentor there, about the fact that it's almost equidistant for Grumman to go to Bresco or the landfill. One of the things they didn't have a chance to find out was the difference in cost. But we raised that very issue of are they going to Bresco because they think it's better? And I was assuming that it actually might be cheaper for them to go to the landfill, and it would help starve the incinerator. As you said, it wouldn't completely close the incinerator down, but it would send a signal to others to do the same thing. And that could have a significant leadership impact.
Great. Okay. So we're going to kind of mix up our schedule a little bit. I was corresponding with Mike offline, and they may be able to do the Chester presentation a little later on in the schedule. So instead of doing Chester at this point, we're going to move on to Flagler Beach, Florida. And are we saying goodbye to you, Amy, or are you going to stick around?
Oops. You are saying goodbye to me. I'm sorry. Crazy day.
All right. Thank you so much, Amy, for popping in and give us your insights. That was wonderful.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. And John and Neil and Bob are going to stick around for a little bit on a couple of these next ones coming up. So the next one is, so why don't we go ahead and introduce Bob Geddert, who is one of our zero waste advisors and is coming in to help us review, be a reviewer here. Did you want to introduce yourself, Bob?
Yes, greetings, Bob Geddert. I am president of the National Recycling Coalition with about 45 years experience in the field of recycling and solid waste management.
Great. And Neil, are you back?
I am back.
Awesome. Okay, so Neil and Bob will be the reviewers for Flagler Beach. Then we'll go ahead and go to Toledo, Lucas County with Bob, Neil, and John. And then we'll have Chester at the end, and Kearney might be back by then. So if she's not, we'll just have Jonathan and Mike do the presentation. So that's going to be our schedule. So go ahead, Flagler Beach. Let's have you take it away.
Thank you.
Oops. My grid is showing. Here we go. So welcome everyone to the Flagler Beach presentation. My name is Wendy Martin and I'm joined by John Lankway and Joy Hughes for the Flagler Beach Zero Waste Planning Project.
Okay, I'm gonna get it started. Flagler Beach is a small town. Actually, for reference, we have a couple photos here. You can see it's on the northeast coast of Florida. And the town actually is only 4 square miles. So it's a little small. Next slide, Wendy. The demographics are a makeup of a little bit of an older population. There's only about 5,100 residents that have a median age of 59 years. So pretty small population. However, the tourism is what's unique about Flagler Beach. They see over 1,000 tourists a day on average. And those businesses that cater to those tourists are lots of restaurants and retail stores. Next slide. Flagler Beach is pretty focused on their environmental impact, but we'll see later that they don't necessarily consider their waste part of their environmental impact. So you can see here their vision statement that we got from the City of Flagler Beach website focuses on preserving their environment as a community asset, providing a safe and healthy, clean environment, and promoting and supporting ecotourism through their natural resources. So they're definitely a pretty active ear. They really want to focus on these things, and I think that they would be very interested in starting to move towards a zero waste plan. Next slide. There's current waste services. The biggest red flag that we saw was that they're picking up their curbside waste twice a week. They also don't separate their food waste. So although they seem to really recognize the importance of the ecosystem, as I said before, they unfortunately don't have much of a handle on how to deal with the waste currently. They haul the curbside trash to the county private business. The city hauls to ELS, which is the Environmental Land Services of Flagler County. And ELS is a class 1 and 3 transfer station and material recovery facility. Their household hazardous waste goes to be dropped off at a closed landfill. It's the Flagler County landfill, but it's been closed for a couple of decades at this point. But they do use it as a drop-off site for household hazardous waste. The yard waste was another kind of red flag for us in our research. We found out that they're actually hauling it over 100 miles away to the Fernandina Beach biomass incineration. So that's something that we'll talk about more later. Next slide. Their recycling situation is also pretty interesting. Prior to April of 2021, they had a single stream with lots of inputs: glass, cardboard, aluminum, plastic. There was lots of contamination and no consistent markets. So in April of 2021, they kind of did a reset. They moved to a dual stream with much fewer inputs, just cardboard in one box and aluminum in another box. And that really helped to improve their diversion. The in-city glass recycling kicked off just recently, earlier this month, and with the purchase of what they're calling Big Blue, a glass pulverizer owned by the city. So they're going to do all in-city glass recycling, and the projected tons of diverted glass is going to be 676 tons per year. They'll use the pulverized glass for city and county landscaping projects at first, and then they have some other ideas. Wendy's going to take over for the community services.
Yes, so the current community services available in the city of Flagler Beach include a once a month event called the First Friday event, which local businesses come together and celebrate, just representing what their business represents, as well as just a sense of community. And they also have a pretty robust food pantry system. It's run by the Grace Community Church, but they actually are in a network of 30 plus donors that all commune there at the Grace Community Food Pantry. So that is some edible food divertibility we've got going on. They have 3 main thrift stores and some outlying thrift stores within the county. And they do have a Surfrider chapter that is on the books, but it is inactive at this time. There is not much activity going on. They also lean a lot, because they are a city of only 5,000, into the county. And so the county puts on an annual cleanup event called the Palm Coast Intracoastal Cleanup Event, which is a recipient of a $5,000 grant from the Florida Inland Navigation District, which is also called FIND. And the city is actually eligible to utilize that grant. They are in the region that that grant applies to, should they want to use that in the future. And they also have some representation at a farmers and makers market that happens every Sunday in their area called European Village. So although they don't have dedicated eco or zero waste groups or activities going on, they are absolutely able to lean on these current community services to lean into zero waste. We've identified within the community 5 main stakeholder groups for the city of Flagler Beach, with the understanding that because the population is only 5,000 residents strong, that many community leaders wear multiple hats. So of course, every resident is part of the community. They're our main stakeholder group. Then the business and industry, including restaurants, Airbnbs, the tourism industry, and boat manufacturing and maintenance. Those are the 2 main industries of Flagler Beach. Of course, the visitors, as Joy mentioned, there's almost 1,000 per day. The local government and community groups and volunteers, including Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, church groups, etc. So when we galvanize community leaders to practice zero waste, we will see these stakeholder groups influence one another because that small population does have some overlap.
All right. So as you can see, what we did is we contacted their sanitation department directly, spoke with a gentleman named Rob Smith, and he was able to give us a general idea of what they're actually disposing of. As you can see, they're combusting their yard waste. They're only doing cardboard and aluminum cans for recycling. Everything else is landfilled. So again, we're looking at about 4.9 tons per person, right? So, but most of it is landfill. There's a huge opportunity to really get in there and figure out what they're throwing away and see if there's more opportunities for reusing and recycling some of these materials. All right, next slide. So, given that we only had very limited information coming from their city waste management just sanitation department, we went with the Flagler County for divertibility tools because it was a little more in depth to give us a general idea. So again, there's most of it, if you're looking at it, is plastic, paper. There's a good chunk in food scraps and other, which was like white goods and things like that. Next slide. So if you break down everything they are currently potentially throwing away, the material value is approximately $432,000, right? So there's a good opportunity there for them to do something else with this stuff than other than putting it into the landfill.
So for our findings, there was a knowledge gap. As John just mentioned, there was some areas that we were not able to get a very concrete characterization of waste analysis. So we recommend that they definitely need to conduct one of those because there is a knowledge gap between what the county is reported and what the city is reported. Additionally, visitor perceptions. So when there's almost a 5-to-1 ratio of tourists or visitors in the city at any given time compared to the residents there, they are spending less than a week at a time in Flagler Beach. So they are not going to take the extra effort to ensure that that recycling is, sorted properly or their compost is sorted properly when they're not even there to see the pickup date. So that is one of our findings, is that the visitors really have a lot of pull in this situation. We need to make it easy as possible for them to participate in zero waste. And lastly, one of our findings was that operational cost involved in implementing these items, we just didn't have a good dollar amount for them. So the implementation of some of our recommendations, we are thinking broad, big picture. We want to galvanize them to really lean into zero waste as a concept. However, we will need to take into account the resources available and operational costs of our recommendations.
So the first thing we need to do is come up with an actual zero waste plan, right? And establish those goals and benchmarks, do it and analyze what they're doing, right? Just that's step one, right? And then one of the other policies we decided to come up with or suggest or recommend is the pay as you throw ordinance. I live in Fort Collins area. We do that. It works really well. So we're basically incentivizing people to really think about what they're throwing away and to encourage them to recycle more. Our next policy is lead by example. We want a top-down effect, right? Let the city, starting with the city council, let them again show that they're not just preaching it, but they're also practicing it as well.
And we also derived 3 programs from our research. The first program being a zero waste week. So both Joy and I, 2/3 of our group live in Gainesville, where they have a zero waste program that we could model Flagler Beaches after, which is essentially an awareness campaign and community event, which is led by the businesses. So when businesses participate in zero waste initiatives, they are then passing on the awareness to the customers, to the consumers. Additionally, they have the opportunity to host different events. There's a multitude of different events, just some examples being speakers that are subject matter experts, classes, or pop-up events to promote zero waste throughout the businesses. Program 2 being essentially public service announcements. It's a zero waste messaging behavior change campaign, including PSAs on the radios, social media ads, newspaper articles, etc., spreading awareness about not just zero waste, but how that will positively affect the community. And number 3 would be ocean-friendly restaurants. So this is derived from the Surfrider Foundation's checklist of not zero waste, ocean-friendly restaurants, which requires participating restaurants to meet 7 mandatory criteria as well as 3 optional criteria. And what we would be proposing is an incentivization program for restaurants in Flagler Beach to participate via city council recognition. They would receive vendor discounts on sustainable products through the Surfrider Foundation, as well as be listed on an ocean-friendly restaurants tourism guide, as well as local publications to really incentivize that people visit those restaurants.
Our infrastructure recommendations start with an edible food recovery hub and network, as it's way up at the top of the food recovery hierarchy. Eligible partners there would be restaurants, grocery stores, schools, etc. And of course, the benefits there are to reduce food insecurity by, feeding hungry people, reducing waste and those potent greenhouse gas emissions that end up in the landfill, or that end up being produced when the food goes into the landfill. The second one would be a countywide compost facility. We want to suggest that they not only create a compost facility where they're collecting curbside residential and commercial food scraps, but also the yard waste and incentive, and also build an education, have staff on hand to provide materials to incentivize those backyard community composting programs, so people can do it on their own, or they can just drop those food scraps in a bucket and have it picked up once a week. The third recommendation that we talked about was usable public works projects. We want to hydrate those residents and visitors with water bottle refill stations. It's a source reduction project that's sustainable, non-polluting, and safe, and over time can prevent thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of single-use water bottles from ending up in the landfill. And also waste collection and sorting stations that are clearly labeled, multi-stream, and in many locations. Each approaches parking lots, government buildings. The pier is one big kind of community location that lots and lots of people are in and out of, as well as Veterans Park, where their First Friday events are held, and the city library.
So possible next step, I think the key thing we need to do is engage the stakeholders. We need to get the community involved, right? Then we also want to identify land for compost, right, and organic materials, and go through the cost analysis with infrastructure and possible implementation of a time frame. And then the other key thing is identify the staff within the city to build and prioritize a zero waste plan. All right, next slide. And we love this quote. We don't need a handful of people doing zero waste perfectly. We need millions of people doing it imperfectly. We're all about progress, not necessarily perfection.
And that's our presentation. Who has questions?
Wow, that was really great. I'm going to turn it over to Neil first to kind of give you his reflection and questions, and then we'll go to Bob, and then we'll open it up. Go ahead, Neil.
Guys, that was very entertaining and informative. Thank you very much. As I did before, I'm just going to run down my comments. I'm going to start with a joke. Someone said, one of you presenters said that there's a knowledge gap. I think there's a stupidity gap. Any county that sends its source-separated yard debris 100 miles to be burned has to be crazy. Forget the environment, it's just money. It's at least $250,000 a year in transportation, plus, I don't know these exact numbers, plus the tip fee. that I would say is your biggest target. And I'll continue with this thought. What I didn't hear in the presentation, the ideas were sensational, you were all properly motivated, but I didn't hear costs. And the PSA program, the outreach, absolutely essential. Organize, organize, organize. But I believe, sorry about my throat, but I believe that the cost savings will get their attention. Everyone is zero waste. Everyone loves the ocean. Everyone loves the sea, but they're not doing much about it. I'm talking about the government if they're sending yard debris to be burned. People should know what that costs, and people should know what the cost of your alternative is. Decentralized composting, backyard, community. I did see a slide
Just to pipe in there, Neil, that of course wasn't a part of our class outline. So we have, limited amount of tools and information that we are exploring, and we have not done a tutorial on estimating costs of diversion programs. So that is not a miscite on their report. We did not ask them to present on costs.
I did not intend that at all. I'm saying that the economics is a tool for you to use, and all the tools you want to use. I think it needs to be put forward on top, particularly since they're doing something so silly cost-wise as to ship that stuff which can be ground up. As far as the compost system, I think you're on the right target. One centralized facility in the county is probably not enough. It's better to have redundancy in a few smaller compost sites surrounding. Now, if they're picking up garbage 2 times a week, there's room for savings there. I would focus on that. The landfill is a perfect place for at least one of the county compost sites, and I do believe Alachua County is planning on doing that if they haven't done it already. The fact that they're going just for paper and aluminum and curbside, if they're going for aluminum, why don't they go for the rest of the metal? I don't get that. And of course, I don't know where your markets are. The fact that you're doing dual stream is terrific. The tourists, I think tourists that come, I'm a tourist too, every once in a while. Tourists that I see are coming from communities that recycle. So I don't think tourists are a major challenge. It's up to the property managers if they're visiting in an B&B and so forth. As far as the restaurants are concerned, I love the idea of ocean-friendly restaurants or water-friendly restaurants. But I think you could be a little bit more aggressive and ban certain things. Certainly ban plastic straws. Paper straws are de rigueur in most places. Very few places are still using them. Same thing with plastic cups. A lot of that stuff should be banned. And if it is banned, as is happening across the country, companies are popping up with refillable, washable takeout containers. So there could be stimulus for small businesses. Those are my suggestions. Again, these are suggestions to a very well thought out program. And I hope you don't mind my brusque Brooklyn accent.
Thank you so much, Neil. Do you guys have any responses or reflections to Neil's comment?
Yes. So again, we didn't break down all the cost of everything, but we did make sure to include the potential value of the materials that are thrown away, right? Mm-hmm. And that's, essentially my role with my company is sales. So that's the first thing I always think about as well. And the one reason we said at one centralized compost, because we're really focusing on Flagler, the city beach, the city, not the county. We just pulled data from the county because there wasn't enough data from just the city to get enough of a material composition, right? And break down the divertibility. But yeah, no, I like your idea about the straws and stuff. We just finally banned plastic bags in our town and city. So yeah.
Again, thanks for filling me in on what it's like down there.
Bob, did you want to share any observations or questions for the Flagler Beach group?
Absolutely. I really enjoy your energy. This is a really tough situation. This is ground zero, literally ground zero. And I really believe in your faith that you can turn this situation around. And it's a great opportunity. There is tremendous opportunity in recycling, as you show from your charts and your slide presentation. And I believe that you have tremendous opportunity. I do look at the financials as Neil points out. I recognize that you didn't dive into the financials through your class, but there is tremendous opportunity in the next few years with federal grants, the infrastructure grants that are approved through federal funding. Is a great opportunity for you to look at. And there is an NRC webinar coming up on May 24th to offer you some suggestions on how to apply for federal grants, May 24th at 2 p.m. Eastern time. And we can distribute that information to you. But the federal grants are available this year and for the next 5 years. And so as you build your programs, you can build funding bases through federal grant funding. And so I strongly urge that you look that direction. Also, as Neil noted, there is financial savings as you can look at your yard trimmings and your trash program. There is ways to do some cost savings there. Tremendous opportunities in the reuse field that you briefly mentioned there, but in the hierarchy, I strongly urge you to look at waste reduction and reuse opportunities in the field of zero waste. But you did mention that, but I think there's tremendous opportunities. Hard to work with the tourist crowd on reuse, but I see opportunities in a reuse business opportunity as part of a tourist trade, and see, as a planted thought there. I really like your big blue glass opportunity there. I see the use of the glass being a certain form of downcycling, and maybe you could explore some upcycling of the glass. Maybe a glass a blower or glass type of a business that could make consumer products out of the glass, maybe upcycling opportunity there, because it's very pure, clean product that's being supplied to that glass crusher there. Also, I'm intrigued by the knowledge gap. I think we run into the knowledge gap in many communities. You do have a unique knowledge gap that's pretty deep there, and I recommend your city officials and select citizens taking a tour of local communities that have good recycling programs. In Florida, there are some programs that could be toured that the basis of a tour is to kick the tires of some equipment and look at how recycling collection and reuse programs exist. And I highly recommend working with Amanda Waddell in Gainesville. She has a reuse store, and you may even know her.
Yeah, Amanda was the mentor to this group.
Fantastic. Okay. I'd go down to Gainesville and take a look at her programs. I think I'd take a few of your officials and city people down there, and you can learn a whole lot from Amanda. and her programs, fantastic programming that she's working with very limited funding. And she does a lot there. And so I really recommend that. And another thought is, as you try to convince and motivate people to change patterns, think about climate change. I just taught a course on climate change at a local university, and there is dire reports from the UN IPCC report that we need to move away from fossil fuel dependency. And I see a direct connection from our past disposal patterns and incineration to recycling. Recycling is supportive of our new direction towards the support of the earth and away from the destruction of the earth and the climate change impacts that we see. And you could utilize your zero waste approach with the support of the climate change conversation. And I know climate change is a politically difficult conversation, so there is concern in how you approach that conversation. But my approach is GHG impacts and incineration and landfilling GHG impacts versus the reversal of GHG impacts with recycling and composting. That's my input there on that topic there. But I think as I round the gap in my suggestions, I think my most impactful suggestion is working on the knowledge gap and touring good programs around Florida. I think that will really help you in finding equipment and new ideas by touring good programs.
Great. And keep in mind, this was a class project. These folks are not from Flagler Beach. So anyway, okay. John, I know that you, did any of the folks in the team want to respond to Bob before we turn it over to John for a couple of observations?
No, we appreciate your feedback.
Okay, John, you must have some affinity being at Kauai. You have some of the similar issues to the overrun by tourist issue.
Yeah, just a few quick comments. First one, one of your recommendations was to get multi-material stations, zero waste stations, or barrels at all the public locations and a lot of other locations. And the question that I have, because we've tried that here, is who manages the various drop sites? We got made a big push, bought a whole lot of just recycling cans, not the green waste or not food waste cans, but recycling cans. Got them out in all our parks, all the state parks, on our walking paths. But the parks guys say, "Oh, it's not our job to manage those," and the solid waste guy says, "We're not given any money to manage those." So, I mean, the really best management is people, scavengers that ride around on bicycles and pick all the recyclables out. So that's just kind of one of the things relating to a small community. Yeah, I think, I guess it was Bob that mentioned, but the issue with tourists, I found that maybe it was, anyway, one of you guys mentioned the issue with tourists. We found that the tourists are extremely willing to go that extra step if you'll clearly explain it to them. If the hotels can become, or the resorts can become partners in this, but it's not that they're not willing to do a little bit of extra effort. It's just that it needs to be laid out fairly clearly. I guess another thing is I think this is something that's been mentioned in a lot of other communities. is green waste. One success we've had on here on Kauai is dealing with both with residential and commercial green waste. Well, our I guess traditional recycling rate for traditional materials, glass, aluminum, paper, that kind of stuff, is still hovering around 25%. Our diversion rates for green waste, both for residential green waste and commercial green waste, is up around 70-75%. And the commercial side was really pretty simple. We just had disposal bans on that for large generators of green waste. And on the residential side, even without curbside pickup, we have no curbside pickup of anything but trash. Just by providing convenient drop-offs at our transfer station, residents will participate. So I guess a lot of this is giving the community and the tourists a little more credit for doing the right thing, because I think they will do the right thing if you can explain it clearly and let them know what the solutions are. I think the final thing that was mentioned was economics, and I think that's the most important thing, because when it comes down to it, to your city councils, county councils, whoever's appropriating the money, you have to clearly show them that we're looking at both short-term and long-term solutions that will save them money and make them look better, because that's what they're going to buy into.
Great. Thank you so much, John. So we will solicit the advisors' participation in a cost of recycling and zero waste tutorial for our class next time. I'll invite you all to that. Any response from the Flagler Beach team?
Oh, again, thank you for your feedback.
All right. Well, thank you guys so much. It was excellent. Great research, great use of the tools, great use of comparable data, exactly what we were hoping for you guys to do. So we're going to move on to the Toledo Lucas County group. And are you guys ready to share your screen?
Absolutely.
Awesome.
All right, there we go. So we are the planning team for Toledo, Ohio. I'm Adam Cassidy, and I'm going to be joined by Rachel, Andy, and Lauren. So moving right into things, if you don't know, Toledo, Ohio is in the northwest corner of Ohio along one of the major tributaries to the Lake Erie, the Maumee River. We're also known as the Glass City because of a long history in glass manufacturing. Back in 2013, this sign was put up in the city of Toledo, and it's been a slogan for the area ever since. Good things are happening here. We are growing, but it is time to improve our green infrastructure, which we'll talk about, and really look towards a sustainable and zero waste future. So let's get into that conversation a little bit more. I will hand it over.
Okay, great. So to just give a quick overview of the residential demographics, the city is has approximately 270,000 residents, and I will note that this population has stayed fairly stable since 2010. So, and population growth has also remained about the same. So we can probably expect to be planning for this number of people into the future as we're looking to make upgrades to the infrastructure and certain programs. And you can see the other statistics on the right. And to give another quick overview of the commercial demographics, you can see that in that descending order from the bottom, is that manufacturing, sales, and administrative staff comprise the largest sections of Toledo, and that just shows that this is a very manufacturing and industrial-based sort of economy in the area, and that's the groups we're looking to connect with in terms of stakeholders. Move on to the next slide.
There are a number of stakeholders supporting the City of Toledo's recycling and sustainability initiatives. Besides the municipal infrastructure, it's also important to mention that the City of Toledo is Lucas County's county seat, which means that the county entity plays a significant role in this landscape. Lucas County manages the Solid Waste Management District, which develops programs to support waste reduction and recycling, and the county also supports the Toledo Lucas County Sustainability Commission. There are some fantastic nonprofits working in this space to provide education and advocacy services, such as Keep Toledo Lucas County Beautiful. And as Andy and Adam mentioned, manufacturing is a significant industry in the area, and there are notable businesses such as Livy Glass and Owens Illinois Glass, which has targeted initiatives aimed at growing and improving glass recycling. Some of the important items to note from our situational report and general findings: the City of Toledo owns their landfill and contracts with a private waste hauler, Republic. Every single family residence has a recycling receptacle with a collection every other week. Although we have found that there is a high contamination rate as residents are not recycling well, and many are using their recycling bin as extra space for garbage. There also seems to be a lack of knowledge about the recycling pickup schedule, as many are putting out their recycling carts every week. There is no formal multifamily program for recycling. There have been no cart inspections since 2018, and the nearest MRF is almost 90 miles away. There is no organized food scrap collection or formal food rescue program in place. There are commercial composting options available through a company called Go Zero, and they are currently developing a system of food waste collection hubs for residents in the community that would be staffed a few times per week. But there is no composting facility within Lucas County. And to note, there are no formal zero waste or waste reduction goals currently in place. Using data provided by the City of Toledo, we can chart their solid waste diversion. Currently, almost 90% or 89.7% specifically of waste is going to the landfill, and about 9.3% is being recycled. That breaks down to 3.74 pounds of landfill material per person per day versus only 0.43 pounds of material per person per day that is being recycled. Please note that while composting and reuse is occurring, formal data is not being collected. There are definitely opportunities to mitigate this percentage and find value in the waste stream and find value in what's going to the landfill. Adam will expand on this in his next slides.
Absolutely, thank you. And as we look at zero waste and sustainability, recycling isn't the final answer or the whole solution. It is really changing our mindset to look at resource management. The things going to the landfill are resources. So in the City of Toledo right now, they've got 181,750 tons of material going to the landfill every year. And so that breaks down to a lot of those resources heading straight to the landfill. The two largest being paper at 25%, food waste at 17%. Now, this breakdown is based on data from the Ohio EPA, waste characterizations for Toledo. We weren't able to find one, so looking at finding a specific waste characterization study for Toledo would be helpful. This definitely gives us a good place to start at looking at those resources and what they could provide. Based on that data from the Ohio EPA, as well as looking at secondary materials pricing and information from Go Zero, the local food composter. Here's an estimate of the value of what is currently being sent to the landfill. Now, to recoup even some of this value, some improvements to infrastructure will be needed, which we will talk about in a little bit. And the main takeaways to really highlight are about 67,000 tons going to the landfill that is either reusable or recyclable, 87,000 tons that is compostable, most of that being food waste. 85% could be reduced that is currently heading to the landfill right now, which definitely has its own benefits, both to the environment and climate, especially as we're looking at the food waste. But also nearly $7 million could be saved or returned to the economy in some way.
Here are some of the major findings and barriers we encountered during our team's analysis of the waste systems in Toledo. As we've mentioned earlier in this presentation, there are high rates of contamination of the recycling bins, about 44%, which is a barrier for diverting a greater quantity of waste from the landfill. There is no formal program for the collection of food scraps, and there is minimal yard waste collection. The primary program is a brush pickup that only occurs in the fall. There's no local MRF or organics collection currently, so the local infrastructure is lacking to achieve greater landfill diversion. There is currently no zero waste plan to help Toledo set goals and benchmarks on the journey to zero waste. And there's also no local divertibility analysis to help the city of Toledo determine what items and programs to target on a more local scale. We have three major recommendations as far as programs. For each of these programs, we recommend incorporating outreach and education to businesses, schools, and residents. Our first recommendation is leading by example with respect to procurement and zero waste. The City of Toledo can encourage residents and businesses to pursue green initiatives and zero waste goals by encouraging green purchasing practices within the government sector, for example, recycled products, and avoiding disposables and excessive packaging. Our second recommendation is adopting a zero waste plan and goal. The City of Toledo can encourage green practices and initiatives among residents and businesses by encouraging them to do their part to achieve the zero waste goal set by the city. By setting benchmarks to achieve 90% diversion from the landfill, the city can work together to achieve this goal by the desired year. Our final recommendation is increasing the scope of food waste prevention and rescue programming. The city can encourage pre-consumer edible food donations from food vendors, such as grocery stores and restaurants, to food banks and shelters to prevent food waste. The city can also allow community gardens and small farms to obtain food and organic waste from food vendors to use as compost.
Now I'd like to mention some policy recommendations that will support and complement a few of the programs Rachel mentioned. So implementing a high diversion plan with actionable goals and specific year deadlines would be enhanced through the adoption of ordinances, such as one that would initially limit and then ban organics from refuse collection, and then to ban specific recyclable or toxic materials from entering the landfill. We do understand that this requires service provider contracts and franchise agreements to be strategically negotiated with certain incentives. Adopting green procurement policies to encourage green purchases could also include the creation of regional cooperative purchasing agreements of recycled products. And then municipal and county governments can also implement and require the purchase of green products in all contractual agreements. The City of Toledo can adopt ordinances that limit or ban the sale of toxic or hard to recover products and packaging, adopt an ordinance that places a fee on the sale of certain disposable items, such as shopping bags, and then they could go a step further to require food establishments to use only reusable ware for dine-in and recyclable or compostable packaging for takeout. We also recommend investing in technical assistance and outreach to the business community to support the adoption of these ordinances, as we believe that education and outreach to the community is a critical piece of success, and that it takes a combination of political and societal will to catalyze the adoption of zero waste goals.
So as was mentioned earlier, there are several things that Toledo are missing that we'd like to see implemented in the short to medium term as like a prerequisite for many of the programs and policies that we're looking at. So very evidently, the first thing we're going to recommend is a local material recovery facility. This helps us with accountability, as well as helps us lower our direct emissions from transportation, as well as it allows us to make sure that local stakeholders are more accountable, in the sense that we're not outsourcing waste somewhere else where they might have different policies. And the two other big things is that we would like expanded municipal collection of food waste, because that is the second largest waste stream in Toledo. At this point, there's no collection of these at all on a municipal scale, at least. So this is really important to add, as well as expanding yard debris collection to a year-round program, especially since if we look back in the divertibility and the waste composition analysis, is that wood, all forms of wood and then yard waste are actually combined make up almost 30% of the waste stream. So for Toledo specifically, this is probably one of the most major waste streams that we need to take care of. Next slide. Yeah.
A major next step is creating a zero waste plan that incorporates components that are good for the people of Toledo, the planet, and realistic financially. A major goal in the city of Toledo to prepare for food diversion and compost collection, as well as decrease the recycling contamination, is increasing the scope of outreach and education programming. Cart tagging and rejecting is also a punitive measure that can help encourage residents to sort properly if their cart doesn't meet the standards set by the city. For the planet, our team believes that the major next steps are a local waste stream assessment to determine the intricacies of the local waste systems and challenges related to the specific data collected. Founding a zero waste and sustainability department can help to address some of the staffing shortages and limited ability of the city to conduct outreach and education to the whole population. This will also help to dedicate staff to the zero waste programming, policies, and goals we've recommended earlier on in this presentation. As far as profit, we recommend a market development opportunities assessment and a recycling market development zone to help businesses go green, find value in our waste stream, and adopt eco-friendly practices.
Does anybody have any questions?
Great job. Okay, why don't you go ahead and stop sharing? And we'll first turn to the advisors and see if they have any specific feedback, and then we'll open it up. I think, Bob, you were going to lead off with the Toledo Lucas County group, and we're all very impressed with your graphics, y'all. So great job on that one. Bob, you want to start?
Yes, I'll start. First of all, very impressed with the presentation, and I get the impression that not only is this a class project, but also all of you are from Toledo, Ohio. Is that correct?
No, but we do have a ringer in there.
We do have a ringer in there.
Somebody want to identify as a local there?
Right. So I am the only one in the Toledo time zone, even. So
okay.
Everybody else on the West Coast.
Well, you all convinced me that you were from Toledo. Okay, the reason why I ask is I was born in Toledo and was raised in Toledo, a native, and I grew up near the Willie's Cheap Factory in Toledo. So you all convinced me that you know Toledo pretty well. So Toledo has unique history of underfunding its programs and having difficulty having the funding mechanisms, and recycling and trash collection is paid for out of property taxes. And most people in that city believe that recycling and trash collection is free and doesn't cost anything. And so it's very difficult to expand the services and change the services because the residents don't believe there is any cost to those services, and it's all free out of property tax. And again, that's the same funding base that pays for police and fire and libraries and park services and so forth. And so there's competition for the funding. So I really like your package. I like your ambition and your proposal, but it competes with the police department wanting police officers and fire department wanting another fire station. And that's the head-on issue that I see in Toledo. It's a terrific and wonderful presentation, and I like the direction. You mentioned that the nearest MRF is 90 miles away. I recommend before Toledo has the firepower to develop its own MRF, I recommend partnering with Recycle Ann Arbor. That's about 45 miles north. they really have their act together now. They did not 10 years ago, but they do now, and doing a terrific job up in Ann Arbor, servicing the city of Ann Arbor and Washtenaw County. And I think they have the ability to service Toledo if there's a way to deliver the material up to Ann Arbor. Also, if there is a way to move the price, the cost of service away from property taxes, I highly recommend moving to a pay-as-you-throw programming. That's where successful zero waste programming happens, is through a pay-as-you-throw trash pricing program. And you can move into a 3-cart program. You've got a 2-cart program. A 3rd cart would be expanding to the food waste and yard waste program that you mentioned there, and I fully support you going there. You mentioned single-use bag ban and a user fee on disposable items. I absolutely support that. I live in Cincinnati, Ohio. We've attempted to do that with a city ban and so forth. There is a statewide ban on bans that prevent that. And there's a ban on bans in this, thanks to the state legislature in the state of Ohio. And so I welcome Toledo residents protesting the state ban. And I support your efforts in Toledo to place a single-use ban, bag ban, as well as single-use items on that. I think that's a great addition to your PowerPoint there. I can go on. I'll leave it to the other advisors, but I think my main recommendation for Toledo is to move away from property taxes and into a pay-as-you-throw pricing scenario. You have an enterprise fund for the Department of Public Services, and you can pay for your programs through that enterprise fund and a pricing system, and it can expand your programs from there. So I leave it at that.
Thank you so much, Bob. Does the Toledo team have a response of any of Bob's comments or questions? Bob, did you want to? Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, just jumping in real quick. Bob, I might track you down afterwards.
Absolutely, absolutely. I can come up to Toledo and meet with you.
I met with a very supportive city council member recently about talking about pay-as-you-throw.
Ah, excellent. I'd be happy to talk to you about that.
Okay.
Bob oversaw a very successful enterprise organization down there in Austin, Texas, where not only did they integrate pay-as-you-throw over a period of time, but they also had a community-wide clean fee for zero waste. So yes. He's a really great resource to you guys. So and close by. Mm-hmm. Neil, did you want to weigh in?
Sure. Thanks, Bob. I always follow Bob. Whenever I do follow Bob, I say I feel very smart because I agree with him, and he laid out so many things. Now,
and I always agree with Neil too.
Now, this is going to be slightly off the subject because I am going to bring into recycling my previous history and current interest in the French Revolution and the Russian Revolution. I used to be a professor of this stuff. And you guys are ready to make a zero waste revolution. All you have to do is seize the landfill, just like Lenin seized the utilities and so forth. I'm kidding, of course. But if the city owns the landfill, and you folks are the city council and mayors, the future city council and mayors of the city and hopefully the county, just as Rick Anthony would say, put the landfill on a diet, put in the right policies, and you will the landfill will drive everything else. You will be able to dictate how things are collected, how things are brought there, etc. Now, I'm exaggerating, of course, but publicly owned operating landfills are rare birds these days, and it's a way to accomplish two things. One, force the implementation of the programs Bob outlined. And by the way, this is exactly what Rick Anthony did when he was in control of San Diego County. Is Rick on this call? He was on.
Well, he was here earlier. Are you here? Are you here, Rick? You can weigh in too.
Yeah, Rick can weigh in. But so we know Rick and others know how it's done. But the second thing is to use the cost savings. Bob mentioned the obvious: go 45 miles instead of 90. And if it means adjusting your collection program to take advantage of what's going on in Ann Arbor, that's great. In other words, if you guys could control the flow of the materials, you can dictate it. Now, you can't do that unless you're politicians, but you're pointing in the right directions for where the county should go. I'm going to, I have a couple of other minor things. The bands, that's it for now. I'm sure there's going to be plenty of discussion, but I would, as Bob laid out things, I think focus on getting that best landfill manager you can. I know Rick is committed, but you could bribe him there with a couple of incentives. I'm kidding, Rick. I'm not committing you to anything.
Okay. John, you want to weigh in?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Kind of a follow up on one of the topics there that Neil was talking about is, yeah, you own the landfill. That's kind of gives you an opportunity to really do some things easily without getting the city to commit a whole lot of its resources. That was kind of, must have been about 10 years ago. One of our first major steps was to institute bans and restrictions for commercial waste at our landfill. And it started off not with the generator, but with the hauler, because all our commercial waste is hauled by private haulers. So we just started out with loads that contain more than 50% cardboard, green waste, or scrap metal. Then over time, we tightened it down, and now it's loads that contain more than 10% of that material. The private sector then had to figure out a way to carry that out. Their haulers, especially, because they wanted to continue hauling from these businesses, have developed diversion policies and programs. And some of those diversion policies and programs are been easily expanded to handle the residential side. So if you own the landfill, if you control the landfill, I think that's your first step, is to start banning some of the easy stuff. If you're successful in doing food waste, let me know, because I'd like to know how you can do it. We've been trying to do food waste for a number of years. The problem with food waste is it takes a little bit more effort by our solid waste people. And especially in the last few years with restrictions and staffing and funding, they're reluctant to take on the food waste side. Yeah, so I just want to go back into that if you have control over the landfill, and you have control, gives you control over the commercial stream, because they have a lot of large haulers. And look at that as your first opportunity.
Great. Thank you, John. Toledo team, did you have any responses to Neil or to John at this point?
I don't think so. That all sounds good.
All right. Anybody else have any questions or comments for the Toledo team?
Thanks for the work.
Yeah, very well prepared. I think a hat to you guys and also to your mentor. All right. So Mike and Jonathan are going to present on Chester. They will be ready in just a few minutes. In the meantime, Portia, are you ready to go ahead and talk about the next steps after this? Okay.
Yes, I am. Shall I take a minute to tell people about the conference now?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay, let me share my screen. Okay, folks, some of you have heard about the National Zero Waste Conference. Some of you haven't. In the past, Zero Waste USA did it in cooperation with the National Recycling Coalition. This is the third year, but this time we're taking lead ourselves. with National Recycling Coalition in a lesser role. It's a 2-day event, November 30th and December 1st, 2022. We'll be talking about businesses on 11:30 and communities on 12:1. We encourage everybody to attend both days because the program is very interesting and exciting. Ruth is the program, is not only the conference director, she is also the program director. And a number of people on the call are heavily involved in the development of the program. We have a student advocate rate of $75, which is a 50% discount. I can tell you the password via chat if you're interested in signing up sooner than later. Also, you can volunteer. We need help with getting the word out via various different social media channels, also working with some collaborating organizations to help them get the word out. And also we need the day of the event room managers. People who help the moderator in breakout rooms. I'm gonna, well, are there any questions, even if I can't see you? It's a great event. The live website is live and you're welcome to ask questions after you read the frequently asked questions page via the conference office.
And you want to let them know the website link if they want to sign up?
Oh, what a good idea. www.zwconference.org.
zwconference.org. Thank you.
You're welcome. And I will add it to this slide shortly. I'm laughing at myself.
Another quick, sorry.
Go ahead, Neil.
Portia, on the page, does it show, give instructions how to propose a presentation at the conference?
Yes.
Great.
We have a call for speakers on the menu, zwconference.org.
Thanks.
Great. Now, while Jonathan and Mike are gathering themselves together, do you want to go ahead and talk about what you're expecting everybody to do as next steps?
Sure. Give me just one moment to fix my typos. I don't want to go down in history with all these typos. All right. So again, here's an update of this slide. It's www.zwconference.org. Next steps. But first, I'd like to comment that I imagine, and you can, when we discuss this later, you can confirm that now that you've heard other people's presentations, there's some changes you may want to make to your slideshow. Also, I want every group to include some information on their tool use. In a way, it proves you use the tools, but also a way to for these slides to go down in history as being complete. And that is something I will be asking each group if they give us permission to post these on the website, on the Canvas website, Canvas website, so that future students can take a look at it as well. So I'll be asking you about that after I help you finalize them. So May 17th, that's today, present, take careful notes, and learn from the other projects. May 24th, integrate input, finalize presentation, and submit to me via Canvas as an editable PowerPoint or Google slide deck. I prefer PowerPoint, but if you must, we can handle a Google slide deck. Then on May 31st, we would like you to complete the exam prep form and then the online exam. And if you haven't looked at this yet, it's the same document. It's just an opportunity for you to work on it on your own and then submit to us via the online form. Amanda kindly recreated it in, and Chris DeTournay in Canvas last year, and we've updated it this year. I don't believe there's any timeout errors, but I still highly recommend that you use this two-step process, fill out the form, and then complete the exam. I think life goes much simpler if you're prepared. Now, you may note what it says here. You can study together, but the exam must be in your own words. The first year, some people actually submitted the same exam, and I made them go back and do it again. Also, all the assignments that have led up to today are important. And if you haven't completed them, I suggest you do before you start to fill out the prep form, because they will help you. The exam is designed to take your brain and your project a few steps farther on your own. And it's not onerous, but I know that having all assignments in hand while you're filling out the form will help you finish it more completely. June 15th, that we need the evaluations completed. And that is where you can find the requests for certification. So these steps all are important. If for some reason you desperately cannot complete them by these dates, talk to me. It's not the end of the world. But for our purposes, we prefer to work in batches than one up. So if you have to be late, plan it with me and do not extend it too long. On that note, are there any questions?
Yeah, any questions for Portia on the next steps, what we're expecting? We've very much appreciated how prepared everyone has been. And oh, it looks like Manuel has a question. Go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, Portia. I just wanted to make sure I had it written down just to make sure that everything is set and done. So May 24th, so next week, that's when the slides are due after, you know, all the input that we've gotten, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
And these dates are in Canvas, right, Portia?
Yes.
Yeah, you can look these up in Canvas.
I will double check in case I'm wrong, but I remember putting them in there.
Yeah. Okay, but keep going, Manuel.
No, and then that was just going to be it. It was just on the 31st. Then if it's all on Canvas, then I'll just go ahead and make sure that I write that down.
Well, you could just go to the calendar. It's all there. They're all in here. Yeah.
Oh, perfect. Okay, good. All right, that's all I needed then.
All right, great.
Any other questions for Portia or the next assignments? I think that Chester group is ready. So, and then do we still have either Bob or Neil or John on the line?
I'm here ready for Chester.
Awesome.
Yay.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll go ahead and going. So Jonathan and Mike, you want to get going? You can go ahead and share. Mike, are you talking because you're muted?
Hi, good afternoon. Can everyone hear me?
Yeah, I was talking. Oops. Okay, let me try this again. Gosh, when I screen share, I couldn't tell I was not muted, or it was muted. Okay, so hi everyone. So apologies that Kearney can't join us today. She's working on polls this election day in Pennsylvania today. So she's there's a Chester resident running for state rep. So wishing her luck in that effort. And Jonathan and I will present this. Jonathan will start it off with the demographics and tools, and then I'll do the latter part of it. So Jonathan, it's all you. Just let me know when to move this to the next slide, and I'll go ahead.
Okay. Thank you all for joining us. We're going to proceed to slide 1. So our zero waste project was for the city of Chester, Pennsylvania. The population of the city per square miles is 7,020 people. That is per square mile. Excuse me. The land area in square miles is about 4.84. The age and gender, 7.7% of the population is under 5 years old. 23.6 are under the age of 18. 65% and older are 12.9%. And then females make up 51% of the population. So with that being said, on to business demographics. Now, according to these numbers that we received in 2012, that were last calculated in 2012, the most recent results, you've got a total of 1,518 different businesses in Chester. Of those businesses, 629 are owned by men, 764 are owned by women. 1,108 of those firms are owned by minorities, and 308 are owned, then there are also 308 non-minority owned firms. 136 of those are also owned by veterans, those who served in the armed forces, and then the remaining 1,261 non-veteran are non-veteran owned firms. Now, the situational report with Chester is that currently the city of Chester is under receivership. That is due to the result of many years of mismanagement and poor governance that has essentially paralyzed the city from being able to carry out even the most basic of services on occasion. For example, trash pickup at one point was not a regular thing. Most cities have a dedicated municipal department that deals with picking up waste and trash. What Chester does is that they contract that responsibility out to a company known as Mascaro. And on occasion, Mascaro has failed to actually pick up the trash. And recently, the city, even though Mascaro had frequent failures in picking up and garbage collection, they still renewed their contract with them. So that's another thing. But from people that we know that live in Chester, for now, the trash pickup has been once a week and it's been regular. And I say in quotes for now because you don't know what that may change, hopefully for the better. While Chester as a city does not have a zero waste plan, they do have several processes that are considered zero waste. So as I said, trash pickup are frequent and it's once per week. Recyclables are to be put out during normal trash and are collected by the company Mascaro that I mentioned. The city does provide free recycling containers to residents upon request. They also promote the Delaware Valley Compost Farm for residents and businesses to drop off yard waste for composting. However, the advertising has been ineffective, and the city itself does not keep track of how often it is used by residents and local businesses. In addition to that, the city also has an ordinance requiring all multi-unit properties and commercial businesses to have a dumpster on site and hire a third-party contractor for prompt removal of trash. The city's relationship with Covanta is one in which a good majority of their trash and waste gets incinerated and turned into energy. However, especially amongst community activists, community residents, it's a controversial process because the energy that's produced by it is not much to begin with, and the pollution byproduct is another area of concern. So our stakeholders.
Actually, Jonathan, let me stop you here for a second. Sorry for taking the wrong slide. Just for folks' knowledge, this some of this language was pasted in incorrectly, but Incinerators do not turn trash into energy. Matter is not literally being converted into energy and violating the laws of physics. It's being turned into toxic ash and toxic air pollution. So just to be clear on that point, but we'll go on.
Sorry, I misspoke there.
That's okay.
All right, and then we have to include our stakeholders. So our stakeholders include the city government of Chester itself, the Delaware County government, local restaurants. Chester is also home to Widener University, which, for fun fact, almost became my college alma mater. It's also home to many community organizations, medical facilities, small businesses, churches, homeowners, apartment properties, the Chester Housing Authority, commercial businesses, soccer stadium, and casinos. All stakeholders who have expressed an interest in getting the city to an achievable, to not only have a zero waste plan, but to start putting the city on the path to an overall achievable zero waste strategy. So we identified 3 easy tools to help Chester begin this process. So the first one is best practices training. So best practices training is the idea where you teach everyone how to properly dispose of waste in all sectors. So a community-based organization or the city itself can come to people by request who say, I want to learn to properly dispose of my waste and get down to zero waste either in my home or my business. They can also go out into the community and put up flyers and information and signage in public parks, especially with, for example, like trash cans. So, okay, put this bottle here if it has this sign or this indication of how it should be disposed and or recycled. We believe the result from that is going to be to encourage more individuals to take the power of getting to zero waste into their own hands, and it will help rapidly, move the city along to meeting those goals. Then another tool was the reuse center for sales of goods. So what that is that any reusable material that is used in either food collection, in either food purchase or clothing purchases, or any recyclable any recyclable material that is purchased initially and can be used again, can be sent back to this facility, cleaned and repurposed and sold to anyone or any business or entity or even the government to use for any kind of purpose, with the purpose of the funds from those sales would then go towards making investments in the zero waste effort. An example of this would be what Philadelphia did with their public trash cans. What they did was they got these solar trash cans that compact the trash and tells you when, and it tells the sanitation department, okay, I'm full, come and empty me. So when that happens, the sanitation department will go out there and empty the trash and dispose of it and what may have you. But then the result being was, since they're not out constantly having to manage the trash from public trash cans, they use the extra revenue, the extra and the manpower that they were not using to redouble their recycling efforts. So that's another example of what can be done here. The next tool is Depot Goods Bank. And that's just a simple, the common products and things that we use that we throw away that don't need to go into the garbage, that can be repurposed and used. An example here is like for social services. Old toys that get thrown out after the kids have grown up or they're not needed anymore can be cleaned, reused, and repurposed and given to like a social service organization. So those toys could have a new life with people in the city or locality that are in need and maybe whose parents can't go out and get them a brand new toy. So what we expect from that is just to prevent those things that don't necessarily need to be thrown away from being disposed of in the first place. And now to recommendations and policies. Mike?
Unmuting properly this time. Okay. So, oops. Here we go. So as Jonathan was describing, the small waste hauler, JP Mascaro, that services the city, has been doing a very poor job for years. They have not only not been recycling properly and been dumping recycling in trash trucks, but sometimes not even picking up the trash on some streets or picking it up days or a week later. And so the service has been terrible, and we're going to explore whether there's a cause for breach of contract to get out of the contract that the city sadly renewed and get a hauler that's more responsible. We find that this hauler is able to pick things up properly in the wealthy white suburbs in the same county, but for some reason in Chester there are problems. So that's kind of just like getting up to the floor, the basic fundamental or kindergarten level of service to make sure that things are being collected properly. Then we have pay as you throw as a priority because we know that is the most effective and cost-effective way to quickly reduce waste by on average about 44%, pretty much immediately. But the challenge has been making this work in multifamily. Not that they've tried it at all in Chester yet. Actually, Pennsylvania, I'm not sure there are any places that do it yet. But there are 10,000 communities plus, that's an old number, that have used this in the country already. And yet some of the most leading ones like San Francisco and Oakland, what I hear from them is that they still have not figured out how to make this work in multifamily housing apartments. So we want to experiment in Chester if we can and start working with any apartment owners that we can, or talk to the residents and figure out what it would take to design a program to make it work in that environment. We also know that there's a lot of illegal dumping in the city. A lot of that tends to be construction or demolition waste. And so that's one way we can create a lot of jobs and have a deconstruction mandate, as we're working on also in Baltimore. We're close to having a bill introduced to mandate deconstruction of buildings instead of demolition. And that would be a great model to use in Chester as well. And then finally, as we're working on in communities across the country, ending incineration. This is the largest incinerator in the country with the fewest pollution controls and one of the most glaring cases of environmental racism in the whole country. And so we are close to getting the county to pull out, probably within about a year, to stop sending about a third of the waste that goes to that incinerator. And then the next step is we need to figure out how to end that beyond, like get the other 2/3 of the waste out of there. Now, as far as recommended programs at the city level, we understand they already have distributed blue recycling bins. And so we want to figure out if we can somehow fund getting compost bins distributed, and also if need be trash bins, and then fund the education and enforcement to make sure that things are done properly, and have community level composting so we can decentralize it. And there's a site that might work pretty close just outside the city limits. So getting to that, there's in Chester Township, which is just outside of Chester City, is one of the county's 2 trash transfer stations, and they have about 30 acres of property there. And that transfer station they're going to have to be rebuilding soon anyway, so it's in pretty bad condition. And so we understand that there's room for a material recovery facility, for composting sites, maybe other needed infrastructure at that location. And we want to make sure that there's public transportation for Chester City residents to be able to get jobs working at that location in any of those pieces of infrastructure. So I can't read the chat right now while I'm in screen share. So jump in if you need to speak before I finish this slide. But as far as, sorry, it's blocking my view too. Moving this over. Okay. So I mentioned the first one already. We want to look at the contract and understand for breach of contract with Mascaro. I think I mentioned the next steps on number 2 as well. For number 3, we want to see if there are state, federal, or private grants like recycling partnership, and I think there's another one at the federal level that privately helps fund things like bins and communities. I know Baltimore recently, I think, got some funding from that. And we want to also locate in the most decentralized way we can do composting. So even if there's a centralized site in Chester Township, if there are community garden opportunities or places in Chester and neighborhood level that could be developed for composting, that would be desirable. We'll want to work with the city council, which is impossible to work with now, but next year's elections might change that, and see if we can get deconstruction policies passed at that level. And if not at that level, maybe can see if we can do it countywide. And as far as ending incineration, there are some legal and financial hurdles that this coming year we'll be working with the county to resolve. And that should be able to pull out the 31% of the trash that comes from Delaware County. But we know that there are 3 other incinerators that Covanta has that are locked into contracts that are in Camden, New Jersey, and Montgomery County nearby, and also one all the way out in Niagara Falls, New York. That's on the other side of a contract with New York City that also feeds trash to Chester. And those 3 incinerators are all almost certainly going to shut down before the one in Chester does, which means that if we don't stop those contracts and the flow of waste to Covanta in the first place, that waste will end up in Chester, keeping this incinerator alive. So that's what our Energy Justice Network's campaign is around, tackling all of these incinerators at once and all the waste contracts so we can get them off of incineration in the first place. And I think that's it. Yeah. Stop sharing. Okay.
Okay, great. Now, Mike and Jonathan, were you able to use the tools, the divertibility tools, and get any data from the city on anything, or do some comparable data work?
Right. Well, as you know, Ruth, because you've been consulting for the county on this, there is no citywide, countywide, or not even yet statewide data out on waste composition. So we did not get to try to do that tool. But I was also wondering what the purpose of that was and whether that needed to be part of this. Because if we use national data or something, we also don't have the pricing commodities that fit into that spreadsheet. So I wasn't clear on what that part of the assignment was supposed to generate as far as a result.
Yeah, so I think we can talk about that a little bit, and then we'll look to Neil's comments. But essentially what the tools do is to, we do have, it is gettable to know what's disposed from the city of Chester. So you may or may not be able to get from the receiver or from the, from otherwise much in the way of diversion information, but what's reported to the state is gettable. So that tool shows you what is, we plug in using the tool, what's divertible, what's disposable, what's disposed, and then the potential composition. And Chester is probably similar to other communities. We do have that California tool where you can look at demographics of others in other other cities that might meet the profile in California. We've used that, for example, in Austin and in Boston. We used California data looking at composition data that was comparable, just to give an understanding and to show the elected officials what they are throwing away, right? So even just generic national data can say, hey, look, the recyclables that you're throwing away now are worth money, right? That's the purpose of that commodity analysis. And then for the, to understand, so that's the point of doing that tool, is to say, here's what's potentially in the trash, here's what you're currently disposing and diverting, and here's what the potential revenue is, even using very generic, nationwide data, to be able to use it as a tool to show that's the potential of reduction. And then it also informs where you should focus your efforts. So I didn't necessarily see, and you might see if we were looking at the data, Organics and food scraps is probably still a big component of what's going in the garbage in Chester, because guess what? That's what's the big component of what's going in the garbage nationwide. So, that's a way of thinking about how to prioritize your policies, programs, and infrastructure. But as it is, I'm sure that the ones that you presented are very appropriate for Chester because you guys are very close to the ground there and know what's going on. So we'll probably want to use that tool before you finalize this report, and we can obviously help you guys with that. So did you want to turn it over to Neil? Neil, did you want to give any comments and questions to Mike?
Yeah, and is Jonathan also presented, didn't he?
Yeah, he just did.
Great. I did have to step away for a few moments. I'm on another NAACP webinar. I apologize. I only missed about 3 minutes, and I am somewhat familiar with Chester, having worked for many years in Philadelphia on the city council and organizing in Philadelphia. And I'm sorry. Oh, I'm sorry.
No, I was just saying. Yep, I burped. I'm sorry. Excuse me.
Not a problem. And I want to say that you two are taking on a big problem because it's not the city. Again, from my memory, Delaware County plays a big role in those politics. I worked with the mayor of Chester, who was a Republican. She was a heroine in my eyes, but she was up against tough stuff in Delaware County. So having said that this is a very tough thing, you guys can do it, because I know Mike more than you, Jonathan, but I know Mike has tackled quote unquote impossible situations before and has won and almost won in a lot of them. So I appreciate the work. Here are my two specific things. I have nothing to say about the strategy. It's organizing. I couldn't improve upon what you guys know and what you're planning on doing. But I want to point out the national importance of what you're doing in Chester. One, because Chester is at the nexus of garbage flow from all over the region, New York City, obviously Chester and other places. So it's a major tool. It's a capacity for the wrong type of capacity that's being used. So it's critical to shut that incinerator and get to zero waste in Chester. Also, Chester is unfortunately a model city for many of our cities that have been gutted out due to the terrible policies that we're dealing with. And the final thing I'll say is that Chester, because it's a city in trouble economically, socially, et cetera, like many of our cities, including rich cities like DC, is also at the crossroads of issues. Youth issues, housing issues, jobs, environment. The garbage thing is so much bigger than garbage, because everything that we want to do in our communities, good jobs for people, recreation, the good transportation, it all bogs down to getting to, among other things, getting recycling and waste straight, because that one provides resources for these other very important issues. But it also, when you win, it provides energy for our side. And I'm going to stop there and just let us know if we can help in any way.
Thank you, Neil.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Our colleague who it was unable to join us actually is from Chester and lives in Chester and is very much well aware of what's going on there. And if she were here, she would also would have informed all of us that, as you know, the city is under receivership, but the individual who serves as the receiver has been doing a good job in terms of being transparent. Anything that she can get or request of them, he tries his best to get it out and get it to them. Including some of the materials that we used in putting together this assignment came from the receiver, who had passed it along to Kearney, who then passed it along to me. So, there are issues in Chester, obviously, and it compounds everything else. But I think there's something. It's a situation that can be helped. Things can be done here, so I appreciate that. Thank you.
Let's go to Chris. Chris Barnick, you have a question or comment?
Yes. Couple of things. One of the things that stood out to me was this is a tough one. There's no doubt about it. And the thing that stood out in my mind is to ask the question of how many people that live there are short-term residents? Are they there for just a few years and then they're out of there because of some job or some, like they're in school? Or is there something about that location that makes the stakeholders the less likely to be long-term stakeholders? And is that something that could be causing some of the problems? So that was one thing that I was curious about. And the other thing I was going to just point out was that we're not all graphics artists, but there was a lot of very small text on your presentation. It might be kind of hard to read for some people, especially if they have eyesight problems. I would suggest reducing the amount of text that you have and enlarging some of that text to fill the page so it's more visible, or adding some graphics. Also, if you had some of the data from the stuff that would have been done from the tables and sheets that we had, that might have filled in some of the graphics as well and informed us better about what's going on in Chester. So there's all kinds of good things that can happen if you just change around. You don't have to have everything said in your presentation. It's basically just a way to show that the audience that you're going to be talking about some concepts, and you'll talk about them larger, and then those short concepts will be in your presentation. Don't try to fill the whole screen with everything that you learned. So that's really kind
Thanks,
of important.
Chris. I agree with you, and I was going to work with them on that because it's too much text and so on and so forth.
Thank you.
Good presentation, but I agree.
So as far as to answer your question, Chris, it's not DC, where it's a very transient city. It's a small city, but it's very tight knit. A lot of people are related to each other. A lot of people, Zuline Mayfield, who leads the community group there, she can talk to almost anyone and be like, "Who's your mom?" "Oh yeah, I know them." And yeah, they're all like related. So it's a very tight knit community. I wouldn't say it's very transient, but the owner occupied rate is very low. And only about 20 minutes away in one of the wealthy suburbs, the owner occupancy rate is 78%, but in Chester it's 37. So,
so they don't really feel like they don't feel like they're empowered to be the owners of that community. They don't feel like stakeholders because they don't own the land.
There's that aspect, and there's a lot of gentrification effort being pushed on the city right now as well. So there are a lot of other factors that are struggling with.
Okay, thanks for clarifying.
Let's see. I think, John, did you have your hand up? John Harder, did you want to weigh in?
Yeah, I just, well, my main comment, especially started off right at the beginning. This really looks like a basket case. It looks like really easy to recommend solutions, but they'd be difficult, if not impossible, to implement them. So in many cases, you may just be spinning your wheels trying to do some of these things. A couple things I would have liked to have seen or heard of is what is the solid waste management authority within the community? Is it separate from the city? Is it within the county? How can you affect that? And secondly, some more information on waste composition, especially commercial versus residential. So we can start looking at what the low-hanging fruit are. But it does look like if it's a small city and doesn't really have any control over the waste stream other than what they collect from residents, it may be really difficult to implement any really far-reaching changes. One thing I would like to comment on, because I've been working on it here for quite a while, is deconstruction. We've had in Hawaii, and especially on Kauai, some demonstration projects, some fairly successful demonstration projects. And we've got a number of reuse facilities that take construction material. But every time we try to push for some form of deconstruction ordinance, we get a lot of negative feedback from the building departments, because you're kind of putting a burden on them to implement it both in the permit review process and then in the inspection process. So we've had little success in implementing deconstruction. On the other hand, in educating the contractors about the economics of reuse and salvage and reuse versus landfilling is where we've had most of the successes. So supporting reuse centers and better educating the guys that are generating this material might be a better route to success.
Yeah, thanks, John. So I can respond with some of that. Yes, it is a very hard political environment in terms of the city. There's a history of it being run by organized crime, of people's votes not being secret, of a poor Black city being all Republican run until just a handful of years ago. So Democrats run it now, but they're actually worse. It's been very corrupt and dreadful. However, things are not. Things are actually optimistic. They're not pessimistic, I was going to say. So this is run at the county level for the most part. There's a Delaware County Solid Waste Authority that manages waste in the county, and all the 49 municipalities send waste to them or straight to the incinerator, but through them contractually. And the fact that this has been our number one priority at Energy Justice Network. We have been pushing hard for especially the past 2 years on about a 12-pronged strategy of hitting them from every angle. And within 1 year, we have basically taken over the Delaware County Solid Waste Authority. We now control the chairmanship, and within one month, we're going to have 4 out of 7 votes against the incinerator. So that was coming from about 0. Now we'll be controlling the authority and turning them into a zero waste authority. We also managed to get the county to hire Ruth's team, the Zero Waste Associates, as the contractors to guide them in the next decade of this county's solid waste management policy. So that is a huge victory. We designed RFP so that basically it scared off all the other consultants that normally get these kinds of jobs. So I think we're on a really good track with the support of the county, and we just need to turn the city around ultimately to get additional support at that level. Waste composition wise, like I said, there isn't that data, but there is a statewide survey being done that should be out in the next few months. So there'll at least be that, and maybe a local one can be done under the new leadership at the county level. And finally, you mentioned deconstruction, and yes, that is a tough thing because the developers will always fight you on it. But we've been working closely with folks in Portland, Oregon, learning from experiences like San Antonio. And I think what we're putting together in Baltimore, which Steph has been leading that work, and she's on here, but I'll drop in the link to the website that she set up. It's called the Rebuild Act, and we're about to have it introduced soon in Baltimore City Council. We have a website, rebuildbmore.org. And I think if we can get a city like Baltimore to adopt that, then that could be inspiring to places like Chester, where they have similar demographics and similar issues.
Mike, that's really great. I think that in a place that's resource constrained like Chester is, with difficult politics, on the city staff and the elected official basis, it strikes me that is really going to need to happen is community-based approaches. So not necessarily relying on the city to take the lead, or even the authority or the county to take the lead on some respects, because they can do some things, but they can't do city-specific things. And so some of the community-based approaches that I know you're familiar with in the Baltimore area would be things like the community gardens, as you point out, the deconstruction firms that could be invested in. So I think outside grants and community development approaches, maybe external to the city. And I think what is going on in Chester, because the community is highly organized itself, but also highly organized for energy justice with regards to the incinerator. And I think that keeping up the momentum of organization to implementing zero waste strategies at a community-based level is really going to be important, because I'm just concerned that people are kind of exhausted because they're working so hard all the time to defeat the incinerator. It's really hard to have the mind space to even think about what can we do community-based to improve, as Jonathan said, repair and reuse, community-based compost, other things. There are models, in Long Beach, we were working with East Yards on city might not do these things. They're distracted on other fronts, but could we do the repair fairs and the other things from the community-based perspective? Do you have a sense of that, or are folks too exhausted yet to take that on at a community level, as opposed to asking the city to do something or asking the county to do something?
Yeah, I think if anything, it might come from Kearney working with folks like the Baltimore Compost Collective. I know Marvin's been wanting to come up to Chester and inspire some stuff. So we might be able to get some things going that way. But honestly, we are very much of the mindset that systemic problems need to be changed with systemic solutions. That investing the kind of energy it would take to just do one community garden well, if we take the same amount of resources, we can take over the city and do it well on a much bigger level, or influence the county and programmatically do it at a much bigger level. So that's where we focus the small amount of resources that we have. But we are aware that that can help inspire and get the troops to then work on the institutional changes that we're trying to get.
Yeah.
Okay. Go ahead, Neil. And then it looks like Jonathan has his hand up.
Yeah, I just want to jump in on this very, very point of community energy, which is limited, and the focus. I agree with Mike. I think the focus needs to remain on the incinerator. That's the main activity. I think this is news to me, about the authority and the effectiveness of the organizing that Mike and Jonathan are involved is terrific. It's newsworthy. I'll talk to you guys about it offline. So I would stay focused on the incinerator. Again, as we were talking in previous presentations, controlling of the landfill is important as well. And in this case, it's the incinerator, both for city and county reasons, but also because the incinerator is being fed by Ocean City. Ocean City, Maryland is sending their garbage. It's a regional fiasco. So I think the focus should stay on getting that thing shut down.
I just wanted to respond that I think it's really a good point, working on those systemic changes. So to the extent that the city of Chester is not able to really negotiate the best collection contract from its hauler, one potential proposal is to do, joint procurements with the other cities or the other communities, and having more robust management, either at the county level or at the authority level. And that might get better results than relying on the city, because they're resource constrained as well. Looks like, Jonathan, you have your hand up. Oh, sorry, Neil.
I'm so sorry. I just want to add a little comment. I agree that the grassroots events, the reuse, the swaps, the fix-it swaps, those are all great tools for educating about the incinerator. So I didn't mean to discourage that type of activity. I just meant that I see those steps as tactical to get to the main strategy of getting the incinerator shut down. Sorry, Jonathan.
Well, and maybe it could be additive, right? So I agree with Mike, it's a big effort to do community composting. However, could the current group continue to work on shutting down the incinerator and still get outside funding or some other support to do community composting? This is a possibility. Jonathan?
I wanted to speak to John's point about reconstruction. And this goes back to the whole issue on the governmental entity that of Chester that is so dysfunctional at the moment that it has contributed to some of the problems. So there needs to be deconstruction on a local level, because a lot of the symptoms of the poor governance that have contributed to a company like, let's say, JP Mascaro getting a renewal of their contract, despite the fact that on occasion they have demonstrated that we're not picking up the trash. Goes to show you that this is a city where it's a strong mayor council form of government, but most cities aren't set like that. Most small cities aren't set like that. Smaller cities usually have what is called a manager council form of government, where there's a city manager that is responsible for the day-to-day operations of the city, and also has commissioners that answer to him that are running the local government departments. In Chester, your director of public works is also your councilwoman. Your director of public safety is also a mayor, is also a member of the council. The mayor may be the director of finance. So it's just like the idea that you're a member of the council, but then you're responsible for an agency that has to have constant operational responsibility and meet constant operational community needs is just unusual, and it's contributed. I would use a stronger word for that, but I'm just going to be tame here and just say that it's just dysfunctional, maybe a little insane. And it's showing because if you can't achieve certain services like picking up trash, filling in a pothole, making sure that you have working water systems, because without waters, a city can't do things like maintain life, put out fires. Things could get dicey and problematic pretty quickly. So that's why the three tools that I selected were focused on what individuals can do rather than wait on the receiver, the government, or an election even to reconstruct the government and try to get everything back together. And a recommendation that I don't know if that should go in there would be to change your form of government and re-elect people and appoint people who are experts in their field that know how to run and manage a city, and then have the council there to just deal with the popular stuff of the constituents that they as elected officials can only address because they were elected. Another thing that I have been toying around with, and I just remembered, was a few weeks ago, I was watching a CNN series called Cities of Tomorrow, and they mentioned something about how there is one building in Seattle, Washington, that built a compost facility inside the building. So they regularly are composting their own waste. So for a small city like Chester, who may be in need of building, businesses, or even building like new apartments and new builds, I was thinking of the idea, like, could another aspect, I don't know how that would show up as a tool, but is there like another aspect where we say, if you're going to do a new build, have the ability to self-compost your waste?
Yeah, Rick and I were in Hyderabad, in India, and it's very disaggregated. So there's disaggregated composting, also in Kerala, and so in Hyderabad, all the new apartment buildings have to have their own wastewater treatment systems. So give aside composting, and then in Kerala, which is a state in the south of India, all buildings, all residential and multifamily and other buildings, they have to have their own in-house composters. So either anaerobic digesters, kitchen scale anaerobic digesters, and they use the methane for kitchen fuel, or digesters that they have at the restaurant that they use the fuel that way, or composting facilities. And then they have 8 in Trivandrum. They have 80 bus stops where community compost facilities are. Just at the bus stop. 10 little compost piles. So I mean, anything is possible. So we love those models because those are zero waste models for us, and we don't all have to be centralized industrial scale, given over to the private sector waste haulers. They can be community-based solutions. So I think that's something to think about. So I really want to thank the Chester group for taking on a very difficult project, probably more difficult than a lot because of the issues there that are on the ground in Chester and the opportunities there. So thank you guys. Really, we put a lot of thought into that, and I really appreciate it. Portia and I will work with you on adding a couple of things on the tools side, but I think that you have 90% of it there. So let's see if we have any capping comments, questions, discussions from the group. Portia already gave you our next steps assignments. So we're kind of in the wrap-up phase. So let me turn it over to, I think Chris had to leave. She's in Portugal, but let me turn it over to Amanda and see if you had anything else to say to the group from the instructor point of view. Did you want to say anything else today, Amanda?
Hi, everyone. No, I think everybody did a great job. Portia reminded you about the next steps, which are really important. So we look forward to your revised presentations and the exams rolling in, and then the evaluations, and we will look at all of that and then get you a certificate after all of that is completed, if you wish to have that. So we're going to be working on all that stuff the next month and a half.
And our goal is to make this program better and better and better, more opportunities, more information. I think we got some good feedback about maybe a future LCA presentation, future financing discussions, funding discussions. So there's a lot of opportunity for us to improve and provide services to the greater zero waste community, of which you all now are a part. I mean, I was super impressed with the level of detail of the presentations and the real professionalism that you all brought to this. So it looks like Portia and Gary have some capping comments. Portia, you go first.
Gary to go first, and then Neil.
Okay, go ahead, Gary.
Just along the lines of what you just said, Zero Waste USA is developing an organizational affiliate program. And for all of you, it would be great to stay in touch and keep involved together working on zero waste, not only locally, but collaboratively around the country. And we are developing that affiliates program. Would love to have you all talk about having some type of affiliation with the Zero Waste USA to keep this momentum going. Hopefully this is not the end of your training. This is the beginning of how you apply your training and how we can help you get some of these things actually done at wherever you are working.
Neil, did you want to go next?
Yes, very briefly. As I approach my 80s, it's wonderful to see all you young people getting involved in zero waste. That's all I have to say.
Awesome. Well, thank you to Neil, to Bob, to John, to Amy, to Leslie, all of our zero waste advisors who pop in and give us some really good support from time to time. I wanted to thank all the instructors, Chris, who had to leave, Amanda's who's here, Elena, Anne-Marie, Jeremy, Laura, Really great job. If I've missed everybody, I apologize, but really great job supporting this effort. As you can see, it takes a village to get to zero waste, and I want to recognize Portia as our program manager and director and leader of this effort. So we'll turn it over to you for last remarks.
Well, actually, I felt like we jumped one of the items I had in the agenda, and I thought maybe some of you had something you wanted to say, the students, either about other people's projects or about this experience. Before I hand it off to you, I would also like to say that, yes, these are class projects, and it was designed as a class project, and we discouraged you from looking at it as an advocacy project. But now that you're done with it, you can use it in a community or a form of it in a community to move some zero waste goals forward. Is there any student who wants to say something about their experience or to share anything about they heard today? Or do you just want to go home and
Looks like Barbara has her hand up.
Okay, Barbara.
Yeah, I wanted to piggyback onto what Gary just said about Zero Waste USA developing an organizational affiliate program, because when Chester was doing their presentation and Mike was talking about deconstruction and working with people in Portland, Oregon, it would be incredible to have a topical database, so if somebody's interested in exploring deconstruction, people who have got some information or contacts could, put that information in there, and we can just kind of grow specialized expertise.
And that is somewhat in that managing and transforming waste streams tools. If you guys have had a chance to explore that, it's the 100 different policies, programs, and infrastructure ideas, and 350 real case examples from around the country. And I would be quite surprised if Portland wasn't featured. So I just wanted to give you that feedback that database is something that we've supported the development of, and there's more opportunities to do that. So as you come across case studies, we have a good relationship with Region 9 EPA, and they would love to add more. So if we would like to add more case studies to that database, they would welcome it. Jonathan, you want to go next?
I'm going to jump in and just say that there are great deconstruction resources very close to Chester, Second Chance in Baltimore, and Construction Junction in Pittsburgh.
There are links to some of them on that rebuildbmore.org site.
Well, let's commit to getting those on the EPA website, Neil. That's something we can assign to ourselves. Jonathan? Oops, Jonathan, you might be muted.
Hello, can you hear me?
Little.
Hello?
You're faint.
Perhaps your mic is covering your mic.
How about now?
Better.
Much better.
Good.
There we go. I just wanted to say that it's been a pleasure working with all of you and watching these projects and participating in the classes, and just seeing how like everyone comes from various different backgrounds. I did not think that the background that I was equipped with would help me understand these issues, but I've learned over the weeks it does. So it's been I just want to say it's been a pleasure, and I enjoyed as I was in and out today, listening to the other projects and ideas, and thinking of other things that I've remembered as I've done my own research on zero waste. So thank you all.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Linda, you have your hand up.
I was curious, was Portia going to be meeting with each group and giving feedback for us to incorporate, or are we just doing that from what we get now today?
I will be receiving each and evaluating it, and then sending your group an email and offering to meet with you. Because I want this.
Some might be ready to go, and some might need a little bit more work. Is that what you think, Portia?
For sure. Everyone had a few things that I would like to tweak. Also, because I want this to be something you're extremely proud of and that you want to take forward, not necessarily to do an advocacy project, but something that you're proud of and can take forward with whatever you continue to do. And one thing I want everybody to add the mentor's name. I realize that is a lacking. It helps to have the mentor's name on it as well.
Okay, anything else for today? Portia, did you want to say anything else for now? You'll be in touch via Canvas and email.
Yes.
And we'll wrap everything up according to the schedule that's in Canvas.
Yes, and
so
Amanda
this has been
and Christy Tornay as the instructors of class 1 and 2 or session 1 and 2 will be leading the charge on the exam and working with the TAs to quote unquote grade them. They're not going to grade them, but they're going to evaluate them and maybe giving you feedback saying, good job, but you need to work on it. Because again, we want to finish the project and the exam with in good condition.
All right. Well, if there are no other questions or comments, we'll end for the day. This has been a really amazing class. You've done wonderful work, and we all appreciate what you've been doing. So hope to stay in touch, finish up your projects and exam, and we'll see you soon.
Oh, Gary?
Just one last thing. Save the chat. There's a whole bunch of great links in the chat. So if everyone, before you leave, before we sign off, the bottom right corner of the chat with the 3 dots, click on it. It's Save Chat, and it's really helpful.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Bye.